Park JungWoo had been living a peaceful and routine life as an ordinary employee in a company. However, one fateful day, he discovers that everything has drastically changed. As he enters the company building, he desperately rushes towards the closing elevator, pleading with the people inside to wait for him. Unfortunately, they merely stare back at him and refuse to hold the door open, leaving JungWoo at risk of being late for work. He dreads the consequences of arriving late, as he fears the wrath of Director Choi, who has a reputation for being merciless. Fearing for his job and possibly his life, JungWoo makes a split-second decision to take the stairs instead. After what feels like an eternity, JungWoo finally arrives at the Watcher Soft Games office, panting and exhausted. His sudden appearance surprises his office mate Jae-hyung, who is puzzled by his tardiness. Despite his tired condition, JungWoo anxiously asks Jae-hyung why he isn't going inside yet. Jae-hyung explains that the director has been berating their team leader Jo in a loud and furious manner, causing him to hesitate entering the office. Determined to find a way inside, JungWoo assures Jae-hyung that he has a plan and tells him to follow his lead. He crawls stealthily, guiding Jae-hyung past their furious boss, avoiding detection and ensuring their safe entry. Finally reaching his desk, JungWoo's fatigue and curiosity compel him to inquire about the tense atmosphere in the office. His co-worker Byung-ho explains that the investors have pulled out from their new project, causing immense pressure and frustration for their boss. Just as JungWoo absorbs this information, to his surprise, Director Choi calls him out and reprimands him for arriving at work right on time, reminding him that he is the assistant manager. The director, seething with anger, demands to know the time, to which JungWoo nervously responds that it is 7:59 a.m. JungWoo believes he may have gotten away with his earlier delay, but his relief is short-lived as Director Choi continues his furious tirade, reminiscing about his own work ethic and blaming everything on team leader Jo. However, the director's rant is interrupted when a mysterious floating image of the Earth appears before him. The same image appears in front of JungWoo and the other bewildered office workers, causing confusion and speculation about its origin. Some suggest it might be a bug, while others wonder if their company has been secretly developing augmented reality technology. Suddenly, a message notification appears on the screens bearing the words, "Greetings, residents of Earth. I am sorry to be the bearer of bad news." As people excitedly read the message, assuming it to be a new feature developed by their company, one observant developer realizes that he had no involvement in creating the strange program. Confusion and curiosity grip the room as they grapple with the enigmatic notification. Is it a technological breakthrough? A prank? Their questions go unanswered, and JungWoo, driven by his curiosity, takes it upon himself to examine the phenomenon. He ponders the possibility that it could be a program, but the message itself seems inexplicable. The universe has decided that my life has come to an end. The planetary closure procedure will be carried out in 42 days. Please follow the instructions closely. The revelation dawns upon JungWoo and the others. A sense of impending doom engulfs the office. Despite Earth's desires, the closure has been decided, and they are instructed to follow the provided instructions. The message ends with a solemn apology from planet Earth itself. Panic quickly spreads like wildfire among the employees, but JungWoo manages to maintain his composure. He instructs his fellow office mates to return to their seats, fully aware of the gravity of the situation. Strangely, he finds himself surprisingly unafraid. Perhaps his exposure to apocalyptic games through his work has desensitized him, or maybe he convinces himself that this is all just a dream. Regardless, while the rest of the people lose their composure, the road outside descends into chaos. Amidst the confusion, a deafening noise suddenly reverberates through the office, causing everyone to cover their ears in agony. Frustrated and enraged, Director Choi demands to know if team leader Jo is behind the perplexing prank that has left everyone speechless. However, to his astonishment, no sound escapes his own lips, and the silence seems to afflict everyone in the office as if their voices have been muted by some unseen force. The eerie atmosphere intensifies as a pop-up message materializes before JungWoo, diverting his attention from the commotion around him. The message poses a peculiar question. If you had to choose between fighting two medium-sized dogs or a human to the death using only your hands, which would you choose? Please answer in 20 seconds. Perplexed by the inquiry, JungWoo contemplates the dilemma, realizing that he has no concept of how big a medium-sized dog is. As if reading his thoughts, the system presents him with an image of a Doberman, providing a visual reference. Considering the scenario of two Dobermans relentlessly pursuing him, JungWoo envisions himself being overpowered and bitten by the dogs, ultimately concluding that fighting them is not an option. He then ponders the undefined parameters of fighting a human to the death, questioning whether it would resemble his schoolyard scuffles or a more structured MMA fight. However, before he can arrive at a definitive answer, the timer ticks down to a few seconds, and JungWoo hastily selects his response, choosing to fight the two medium-sized dogs. Without respite, the enigmatic survey continues, bombarding JungWoo with more bizarre questions designed to confuse and blur his judgment. An unsettling realization dawns on him as he contemplates whether this is what it feels like to be on death row. His mind races as he completes the lengthy survey, contemplating questions about sacrificing body parts to lose weight and other unsettling scenarios. As the survey concludes, a new message appears, announcing that JungWoo will now undergo a sensitivity test, prompting him to focus on his ability to perceive sensations. Before he can fully comprehend the purpose of the test, a chilling sensation seizes his feet, spreading upwards, numbing his senses. Soon, his entire body succumbs to an icy grip, rendering him on the verge of becoming a frozen corpse. Confusion and terror swirl within JungWoo as he desperately reaches out for help, his pleas for assistance falling on deaf ears. In an instant, JungWoo experiences a jolt of awakening, gasping for air as he finds himself back in his office chair. Was it all just a vivid nightmare? Relief briefly washes over him, but as he surveys the office, he realizes that others are still trapped in their own torment, choking and trembling as if ensnared in a malevolent prison. Determined to survive, JungWoo grasps his pen, preparing to defend himself against the unknown. Suddenly, Jae-hyung breaks free from the trance-like state, falling back on his chair. JungWoo acts swiftly, catching him just in time. In a panic, Jae-hyung confirms that he witnessed the same disturbing ordeal. JungWoo tries to comfort his colleague, assuring him that it might be over for now. At that moment, a notification from the system grabs their attention, revealing that based on the survey results, each person has been bestowed with a certain amount of essence. The system explains that essence serves as their most potent weapon in armor, cautioning them to protect it from non-human entities, referred to as monsters. Essence can be used immediately if picked up by companions and can grow stronger with accumulation. The system advises them not to lose focus and mentions that finding a savior and assisting them is crucial for resolving the situation. JungWoo is left puzzled by this directive. What does it mean to find a savior? Before he can dwell on it further, Director Choi's outburst breaks the silence once again. He demands to know who orchestrated the prank, ordering Team Leader Joe to uncover the responsible party. To the old man's surprise, Mr. Joe approaches him, and above his head hovers a sign indicating that he is the predator. Director Choi's fear is palpable as he observes the floating description. Mr. Joe, now revealed as the predator, bows to his boss with a cold gaze, expressing gratitude for the lessons he has learned. JungWoo watches this unsettling exchange, wondering if Team Leader Joe possesses knowledge beyond their comprehension. Amidst the confusion, Earth interjects once more, delivering a critical message. JungWoo's evaluation has been completed and he has been assigned the role of savior. The system warns that if his abilities prove inadequate, his role may change or disappear altogether, adding to his bewilderment. Is this some form of a survival game where only the fittest survive? With limited information, JungWoo refrains from drawing conclusions. Suddenly, he notices Team Leader Joe fixating his gaze upon him from a distance. JungWoo's heart quickens and fear washes over his face, realizing that the predator may have deduced his role as the savior. Uncertainty and apprehension grip him as he contemplates the unknown challenges that lie ahead. As JungWoo looked around, he noticed that nobody else in the office seemed to be reacting in the same way he was. Could he be the only one who received the savior message? He couldn't shake off the feeling of isolation and confusion. Meanwhile, Mr. Joe, the team leader, seemed to be pondering JungWoo's behavior, wondering what had caught his attention. Sensing Mr. Joe's gaze upon him, JungWoo's mind raced, questioning whether he had somehow revealed his role as the savior. To find some answers, JungWoo decided to take a closer look at his reflection in a nearby mirror. To his surprise, he saw nothing above his head, as if the description or symbol that appeared above others was invisible in reflections. He speculated that it might be a glitch or something that the system didn't show in mirrored surfaces. JungWoo weighed the possibilities, considering different explanations for this peculiar phenomenon. In the midst of his thoughts, Team Leader Joe approached him, breaking his concentration. JungWoo asked casually what brought Mr. Joe to his desk, trying to maintain a composed facade. The team leader, with a hint of suspicion in his eyes, remarked that JungWoo appeared slightly uncomfortable and questioned if he had seen something unusual. JungWoo and Mr. Joe engaged in a silent stare, both seemingly trying to decipher the other's intentions. Mr. Joe's mind churned, contemplating whether JungWoo had been assigned a significant role by the system. He couldn't ignore the possibility that JungWoo might be the savior, but the lack of any visible description above his head left him with no concrete evidence. JungWoo, still trying to play it cool, responded by mentioning the strange survey they had recently completed. Inwardly, he was relieved that nobody seemed aware of his true role as the savior. For the time being, he decided to conceal this information to ensure his safety. Mr. Joe's suspicions continued to grow, but he acknowledged that he had no proof or concrete reason to accuse JungWoo openly. Recalling the system's message about his role as a predator, Mr. Joe contemplated his options: either help the Savior or take their role away if the opportunity arose. After a tense moment, Team Leader Joe finally broke the silence and assured JungWoo not to worry since he likely didn't understand the situation fully. With that, he walked away, leaving JungWoo to wonder about Mr. Joe's behavior. They weren't particularly close friends, so why did the team leader offer him a ride? JungWoo sensed that something about Mr. Joe had changed since the beginning of these peculiar events. Meanwhile, panic and desperation consumed the office as people frantically made phone calls to check on their loved ones and debated whether to stay in the office or venture outside. The atmosphere was heavy with fear, and JungWoo realized that the situation had spiraled into complete chaos. Despite the confusion and chaos, JungWoo made the decision to head home, believing that being in a familiar environment might provide some comfort. However, as he prepared to leave, a number 5 inches suddenly appeared above his head. To his surprise, he noticed similar numbers above others, ranging from 1 to 5. Recalling the system's message earlier, JungWoo deduced that these numbers represented the amount of essence deposited by each individual. His number 5 inches indicated his essence value, but he couldn't help but wonder if he was the only one who could see these numbers since he was the Savior. Another question lingered in his mind: how could he utilize the essence? The system had provided no instructions or guidance on how to harness its power. As JungWoo pondered these questions, someone approached him and asked if he was leaving to see his family. Startled by the unexpected interruption, JungWoo hesitated for a moment, glancing at Team Leader Joe, whose number 10 inches caught his attention. Nervously, he replied that he had to hurry, offering a vague excuse. Unexpectedly, Mr. Joe offered to give him a ride, explaining that public transportation might be difficult to access in the current situation. Surprised by the gesture, JungWoo accepted gratefully, but he couldn't shake off the feeling that Team Leader Joe was acting strangely. They weren't even close friends, so why was Mr. Joe suddenly being so helpful? Just then, a powerful tremor shook the entire building, causing everyone to lose their balance. Remaining composed, Mr. Joe urged JungWoo to quickly accompany him to the garage, warning that his car might be damaged if the tremors persisted. Together, they rushed through the hallways, determined to reach the garage. JungWoo couldn't help but wonder if Mr. Joe was seeing something that he couldn't, given the higher number above his head. The question lingered in his mind, but there was no time to dwell on it. Upon reaching the elevator, however, they discovered that it was no longer functioning. Faced with another obstacle, JungWoo realized that it might not be safe to proceed with Team Leader Joe, considering his lack of knowledge about what exactly a predator was. Just as they reached a dead end, an exhausted Jaehyung appeared, desperately pleading for JungWoo to let him accompany them, as he had no idea where to go. Seeking Mr. Joe's permission, Jaehyung's request was granted, and the team leader suggested they continue their journey through the stairs. The trio hastily descended the stairs to basement floor 3, but Team Leader Joe abruptly halted their progress, sensing that something was amiss. He remarked that he hadn't seen or heard anyone for a while, which seemed unusual given the emergency situation. JungWoo agreed, noting that it felt as if everyone had suddenly disappeared. Mr. Joe leaned in closer to the basement door, listening intently. The silence was eerie, and he advised JungWoo and Jaehyung to proceed with caution, suggesting that they might witness something truly horrifying. Slowly, he turned the doorknob, anticipation and anxiety visible on his face as he prepared to face the unknown. Moments later, Mr. Joe's eyes widened in astonishment at the unexpected sight that greeted him. Scattered across the parking lot were dozens upon dozens of crystal balls resembling fish eggs. Jaehyung expressed his disgust, calling them disgusting. Team Leader Joe, however, recalled the system messages that indicated essences were dropped whenever someone died. He proposed that the crystal balls could indeed be the essence. Jaehyung nervously asked if this meant that dozens of people had died in the parking lot, but also noted the absence of any blood. While Mr. Joe couldn't provide a definite answer, he remained convinced that those crystal balls contained essence. Jaehyung concluded that whatever had killed those people might still be lurking in the basement. The thought terrified him in the worst way possible, and JungWoo couldn't help but worry about Jaehyung's ability to handle the situation. Unexpectedly, Team Leader Joe stood up with a determined look in his eyes. JungWoo warned him not to go inside due to the extreme danger, but Mr. Joe argued that time was running out and they needed to find a car before their physical and mental strength waned properly. Conflicted, JungWoo questioned whether this was truly their best option. However, he acknowledged that staying in a collapsing building was not a viable alternative. Without waiting for JungWoo's input, Team Leader Joe instructed Jaehyung to get up and declared they would proceed on his signal. Jaehyung trembled but weakly suggested bringing the car to his place instead. This defeated behavior triggered Mr. Joe, who now saw Jaehyung as a pathetic coward. Determined to proceed with his plan, Team Leader Joe moved forward with JungWoo following closely behind. Carefully navigating the dark parking lot, they searched for signs of danger. Though they had encountered no obstacles so far, a strange smell filled the air. After some time, they stumbled upon a sprawl of essences on the ground, making it impossible to progress without stepping on the crystal balls. JungWoo wondered how they could proceed without disturbing the essence. Mr. Joe, keeping a cool head, reminded him of the system's explanation that essences could be picked up and used immediately. JungWoo became apprehensive about looting the dead, considering the risks involved, but Team Leader Joe was ready to take the risk and find out. He reached for an essence, thought about the people who had died, and stated that their essence was crucial for survival. JungWoo was conflicted, unsure if this was the right course of action. However, Mr. Joe's actions had already surpassed his doubts. He tapped the essence, causing it to shatter, and a mysterious energy escaped and swirled into Mr. Joe's body. Moments later, JungWoo asked if he was okay, and Mr. Joe confirmed he was fine. Notably, his number had increased from 10 to 11, leading JungWoo to wonder if the essence had been absorbed. Mr. Joe, panting and exhausted, explained that he was feeling a familiar sensation similar to the sensitivity test. He concluded that they could become stronger by absorbing essences. Given the abundance of essences in the parking lot, JungWoo agreed, emphasizing the need to seize the opportunity since they didn't know when they would have another chance like this. Meanwhile, Jae-hyung watched from a distance as the two collected essences. JungWoo, determined, gathered as many essences as possible, treating them like valuable resources. However, his focus shifted when he noticed a mysterious mountain of broken cars and rubble. Wondering why this particular area had been destroyed while others remained undamaged, he realized that there must be something inside the parking garage. JungWoo realized he had been careless considering the presence of essences and the inhuman level of destruction. He quickly returned to Team Leader Joe, explaining what he had observed and realized. Mr. Joe asked him to slow down, but their attention was diverted to Jae-hyung, who was cheerfully collecting essences nearby. Recognizing the urgency, JungWoo shouted at Jae-hyung to join them immediately. The unexpected arrival of the fearsome monster that looks like a humanoid flytrap throws JungWoo into a state of panic. The sight of Jae-hyung being swallowed whole confirms that a formidable creature was present in the parking lot before their arrival. Thankfully, Mr. Joe, keeping a cool head, comforts JungWoo, but their respite is short-lived as a loud rumbling sound fills the air. Suddenly, countless balls of essence cascade from the ceiling, landing near the two men. They deduce that these essences belong to Jae-hyung, but Team Leader Joe recognizes them as bait set by the unknown monster. He realizes that the monster had earlier laid a trap using the essences of deceased individuals. JungWoo's eyes widen in shock as he comprehends that the creature is hunting humans, but Mr. Joe snaps him out of his trance. Determined to continue their mission of securing a car, the two men start running. However, the monster, with its powerful physique, leaps ahead and attaches itself to a spot on the ceiling. Forced to halt, JungWoo and Mr. Joe find themselves at a standstill as the monster reveals its mouth and emits an ear-splitting scream capable of shattering car windshields. Taking a closer look, JungWoo observes the monster's humanoid body and its dangling arms and legs. It is a terrifying sight, unlike anything he has ever witnessed, even in his worst nightmares. To him, it resembles a naked giant with a funnel-like mouth, akin to a mutated Venus flytrap monster. As the monster continues to intimidate them, JungWoo turns to Team Leader Joe, seeking guidance on their next course of action. Mr. Joe advises against acting recklessly, as provoking the monster could have dire consequences. JungWoo wonders what they can do in this desperate situation. It is then that the team leader recalls a system message mentioning the monster, connecting it to the shared information they received earlier. However, JungWoo remains perplexed as to why the monster hasn't attacked them yet, and Mr. Joe has no answer. He speculates that perhaps the monster is wary of one of them, possibly fearing the predator or the savior. Right on cue, the monster moves and unleashes another scream, this time diving toward the two men in a vicious attack. In a split-second decision, Team Leader Joe pushes JungWoo out of harm's way, causing them to collide with a wall and a car but narrowly avoiding the onslaught. Surveying the monster's power and realizing the dire turn of events, JungWoo realizes that they need to come up with a plan. He urgently asks Mr. Joe if he received any instructions on fighting monsters, given his role as a predator. Unfortunately, the team leader reveals that he was not given any such instructions. Filled with desperation, JungWoo contemplates if they should simply be meant to wait patiently for death after everything that has happened. Taking a brief respite, the monster fixes its gaze upon JungWoo, who instantly becomes the new target, sending a wave of fear through him. As the monster looms over JungWoo, Mr. Joe quickly comprehends the situation and informs him that he will retrieve the car, while JungWoo should distract the monster and buy as much time as possible. With a terrifying scream, the monster advances, launching its attack. JungWoo evades the onslaught, pondering his assigned task. However, simply running and dodging the monster proves to be a challenging mission. In an unfortunate turn of events, an attack propels JungWoo into a wall, leaving him vulnerable to the monster's impending assault. Meanwhile, team leader Joe frantically searches for his car amidst the raging monster. He desperately hopes that JungWoo can hold off the monster for just a bit longer, as it seems to struggle in finding its prey. Seizing an opportunity, JungWoo hides under a car, breathing a sigh of relief after narrowly escaping death. Frustrated, he questions the purpose of possessing essence when he remains clueless about how to utilize it. Moreover, despite being bestowed with the title of Savior by the system, nothing has changed in his circumstances. Suddenly, the monster ceases its pursuit and redirects its search. JungWoo seizes this moment to crawl out of his hiding place, but the monster rapidly approaches. He ponders how the monster has been tracking him without eyes, but his inquiries yield no answers, leaving JungWoo feeling as if he is losing his sanity. As he catches his breath, he implores the system not to assign him a role without providing any explanation. Just then, a blue glow materializes before JungWoo, transforming into a pop-up notification that reads, "A congratulations message." It informs him that his Savior aptitude score surpasses the average. The system reveals that he has earned 21 points through the survey, 7 points for judgment, 4 points for tolerance, and additional points due to recent events, the essence, and his indomitable fighting spirit. Confused by the messages, JungWoo's confusion continues as the pop-up notification is not yet finished. It reveals his grand total of 78 points, and discloses that he has been assigned an evaluator. Puzzled, JungWoo wonders what an evaluator is, but to his surprise, a voice introduces itself as C467, his designated evaluator. Meanwhile, team leader Joe persists in his frantic search for his car, berating himself for leaving JungWoo as bait and holding on to the futile hope that his role as predator might bring about a change. Finally, he turns a corner and spots his undamaged car. Mr. Joe enters the vehicle, contemplating escaping on his own if he departs now. However, in the distance, the resounding boom of the monster attacking JungWoo reaches his ears, prompting memories of JungWoo clinging desperately to life in the face of the unfortunate Jae-young. With a change of heart, he starts the car. Returning to JungWoo, he engages in a conversation with C467, exchanging pleasantries. Before he can ask a question, the monster crushes a car behind him. Reacting swiftly, JungWoo flees, urging his evaluator to get to the point. The voice responds, inquiring about his desires. JungWoo seizes the opportunity to inquire about how to fight the monster and how to utilize essence. The evaluator reveals that JungWoo possesses an abundance of essence and sensitivity to eliminate the monster. Furthermore, the voice explains that the operation of essence is inherent within him. As JungWoo continues to evade the monster's pursuit, he expresses disbelief in the evaluator's information, demanding to know where this inherent ability resides. Frustrated by the lack of response, JungWoo vents his frustration toward the voice. However, as the monster prepares to place a powerful attack, JungWoo finds himself enveloped by energy emanating from a ball of the essence. The essence materializes in his hands, distinct from the sensitivity test and essence absorption. Finally, JungWoo comprehends what the evaluator meant by built-in. It is the survival instinct that prevents him from perishing. As the monster's attack draws near, JungWoo focuses the essence on his hand and at the last moment counters the monster with his newfound power. The powerful blast generated by JungWoo's essence sends the monster hurtling through the air, while JungWoo remains unscathed. Amazed by the display of power, he contemplates whether this is the true potential of the essence. However, the battle is far from over. The monster retaliates by hurling debris and ruins, causing some damage to JungWoo. He realizes that the essence cannot strengthen his physical body directly, but to his surprise, a blue essence shield materializes from his arms, resembling the self-defense shield seen in martial arts movies. It becomes clear to him that essence operates outside the realm of physics, and although he struggles to fully comprehend its workings, JungWoo discovers that by channeling the essence to specific parts of his body, he can block the monster's attacks and even launch counterattacks of his own. Feeling more confident in his abilities, JungWoo believes it's time to teach the monster a lesson. However, the monster emits another ear-piercing scream and launches a relentless assault that overwhelms JungWoo. He manages to land safely at a distance, acknowledging that while he can defend against the monster's attacks, the vast difference in size remains a significant challenge. Seeking guidance, JungWoo turns to the evaluator, but C467 remains silent, leaving him to conclude that no further information is forthcoming. From this point on, JungWoo realizes he must rely on himself as the monster continues its relentless pursuit. He understands that unless he defeats the monster, there is no escape. Recognizing that if essence can be used for defense, it should also be usable for offense, JungWoo resolves to find a way to stop the monster's relentless movement. Just as he desperately hopes for an opportunity to strike, team leader Joe arrives, answering his prayer. Mr. Joe accelerates toward the massive monster, crashing the car into it, momentarily incapacitating the monster. Seizing the chance to attack, JungWoo clambers on top of the car, but Mr. Joe urges him to run. Despite the monster's renewed movements and random limb attacks, JungWoo realizes this is his only opportunity to defeat the monster. Brandishing his pen, he prepares to face the monster head-on. With determination, JungWoo focuses the essence at the tip of his pen, fashioning it into a sharp essence blade. Leaping into action, he unleashes a ferocious assault. Uncertain of its effectiveness, he screams, hoping that it finally dies down as he stabs and slashes the monster with his essence blade. A radiant blue glow emanates from each strike, accompanied by splatters of blood across the parking lot. JungWoo relentlessly continues his onslaught until the monster cracks and ultimately explodes, leaving behind several floating essences. Standing triumphant, JungWoo catches his breath while team leader Joe gazes in awe at the devastating power of his one-hit attack. As JungWoo watches the falling essences, a sense of exhaustion washes over him, causing him to sink to his knees. Despite his weariness, he has never felt more alive. Looking at his pen, he realizes that the power of essence surpasses his wildest expectations, as he has seen a lot of weird things in a single day at once. The status board reveals that it is about to commence the Earth Savior selection process, as JungWoo gets connected to the Savior channel when it gets created. It shows that he possesses termination authority, and he is ranked 2 in the affiliated region of the channel. On the other hand, JungWoo couldn't read anything the status board says properly, since the whole screen starts to float around everywhere, which makes him quite dizzy and unable to read it at all. He realizes that the screen he can see can be seriously related to the game interface, and as soon as he starts to have various questions in his mind, the voice inside starts to reveal all of his answers. While he was swiping and looking through the processes, Mr. Joe comes back calling out to him, curious to know if he is okay or not since his life was in danger. It seems that both of them are fine despite the fact that they have been attacked by a monster, and Mr. Joe thanks JungWoo for saving him. He then decides to leave his site, claiming that he needs to check up on others while making sure that the car turns on as they prepare. While he is leaving, JungWoo notices that Mr. Joe has been collecting more and more essence during that time, as well as the count keeps on increasing on its own. At the same time, JungWoo couldn't point out what region means, and the game suddenly reveals that it is talking about the country, South Korea. It also reveals that he is ranked in 2nd place among the saviors in his region, which leaves him shocked as well. Now, through the newfound systems, he will be able to communicate with other saviors, but there is a catch. He will lose all of the facilities if he falls below rank 5, as he will be losing the authority to terminate access roads. According to him, the roads are something similar to the gates described in novels, and as the monsters pour out of the other dimensions, he will have the ability to access those gates in the world. Then when he remembers the monster named the Janitor, he knows that the gates must be nearby, which revealed the path for the monster, and JungWoo thinks of closing the gate as it is urgent. Suddenly, he gets an urgent message saying that he should be leaving Gasandong as soon as possible, even though he wasn't able to close the access roads in his current location. At the same time, Mr. Joe comes in with his car yelling at JungWoo to get in the car, and JungWoo decides to listen to him as the status board is wanting him to do the same. Then, as they prepare to leave the garage, JungWoo starts to learn the type of species there are when it comes to saviors, and has a look at the outside world when he has the chance to do so. He notices that there are no moving cars, as if they are in a ghost town, and gets on with checking out the status board's chat function, where he takes the nickname of Human, which makes him realize that being down on the leaderboard will make him quite invisible when it comes to connectivity. Despite being the 2nd ranked, JungWoo is tense about the fact, wondering if he can fall through any time. And as he is shocked, Mr. Joe asks him how he is holding up as they are about to head onto the main road. As we get to know that JungWoo's house is in Bongcheon-dong and close to Nakseongdae Station, and they decide to go through the city despite all the risks, as JungWoo thinks of his father even though he doesn't have his number with him. Soon when they arrive in the middle of the street, they get stuck in a traffic situation, and JungWoo gets out of the car only to get threatened by a huge guy with a hot head. Then the man who gets out of the car lashes out at JungWoo, cursing at him, which makes him realize that trying to convince the man will work, but he is conspicuous of the situation. He decides to be honest with the man, as he brings up the subject of the man making too much noise, which could create a problematic situation. But the man doesn't care and claims that the cars aren't moving, which made to make him noise in the first place, and JungWoo states how monsters will be swarming because of the noise. The man then thinks that JungWoo was trying to pick a fight with him all the way to the end, as he raises his hand to attack JungWoo, asking him if he wants to die. Then JungWoo switches up his pen, but the essence starts flowing so much that he couldn't stop himself from putting an end to it. The essence overflows and he places an attack on the man, which leaves the man's car demolished properly. Then JungWoo advises the man to stop honking the horn, knowing that anything can go wrong if the monster continues to rush at them, which the man agrees with. JungWoo understands that there might be some auto-functionalities in his powers, as whenever Essence detected that his life is in danger, it was activated automatically for some reason. Then the status board answers him saying that the Essence activates depending on the wishes of the possessor, and despite the fact that he almost killed the man, it is relevant that he wanted it to activate at that point. Mr. Joe claims that he will never condemn him for the situation that almost happened, but the method was somewhat risky considering everything that comes with it. Then they finally arrive at their destination, but they didn't expect that they will see the place turning into a ruin this fast. They realize that it might have been done by the monsters, but for some reason, JungWoo is quite skeptical at the moment. Mr. Joe thinks that they should be careful about looking for weapons, knowing that there might be monsters nearby, and JungWoo thanks him for coming with him all the way to his house since nobody else came with him. Mr. Joe then acts humbly, stating that he doesn't need to act formally with him in this situation, stating that he is the one who is indebted to JungWoo. Mr. Joe then advises JungWoo to call him Jo Seonwung and hopes to get along with each other as he moves his hand forward to shake his hand. Then they discuss how many things they should carry with them, and it seems that JungWoo has better weapons at home, so they decide to get a bare minimum of things with them. Both of them finally head out on foot and notice that there are a lot of cats around them. Even JungWoo thinks that the whole thing seems suspicious, and he notices that every cat is going in the same direction. Suddenly, some steel pipe comes flying to strike Mr. Joe's head, and JungWoo notices it as he gets struck down on the ground. It seems that he was saved by the activation of his essence when it was needed the most, and suddenly some guys can be seen behind them to trap them down the road. They are disappointed not being able to hit Mr. Joe with their pipe, so they come face to face with the duo to place another attack. They continue to attack them one by one, trying to dominate the place, targeting that they will be taking away their life essences as they have a bunch of them. Soon, when one of the guys ends up cornering JungWoo badly, the essence activates from his pen mistakenly and he ends up killing some of the attackers in one strike, which leaves everyone in the area shocked as a bunch of essences continue to fall down on the ground. Then JungWoo falls down in shock, almost instantly realizing the weight of the situation, and it gives one of the attackers a chance to attack him from behind, while Mr. Joe tries his best to warn him about the situation. Just the moment the thug is about to hit JungWoo with the pipe, he fires up with the accumulated essence that he has inside him as he grins his teeth and ends up severing the hands out of the man's body in rage. As the hands of the thug go flying, Mr. Joe and his attacker continue to witness the scenario unfolding in front of them, while JungWoo realizes that there is no time for him to think about an ideal way to end the incident, so he had to do what he needed to do in the moment of desperation. Considering survival his only priority, he gets ready to live the rest of his life, and just as he is about to move his target on the only living thug, the man starts running away almost instantly after leaving Mr. Joe from his grasp. JungWoo then insists to Mr. Joe, saying that he will be chasing down the man who left the scene running while he leaves the duty to keep eyes on the thug that is injured and on the ground. While Mr. Joe gets ready to take better care of the thug, JungWoo keeps on chasing down the one that left the scene, cursing in the name of JungWoo as he tries his best to make out of the situation alive. Somehow, JungWoo ends up grabbing onto the back of the thug's collar just to place an attack on the man to finish him off. But the moment he is about to make an attack, he notices that his rank has dropped into the 4th place, which makes him realize that he is soon about to lose his authority if it keeps on going like that. But JungWoo thinks that finishing off the man is far better for him than saving his rank right now, so he focuses on the task at hand. When the man thinks he is faking to make an attack, JungWoo ends up blasting away the man's body with his full strength, claiming that he will be the one surviving as a bunch of essences falls down close to his feet. On the other hand, Mr. Joe is hesitating about what to do to the man that is left on the ground injured after losing both of his arms, and the man continues to beg him to leave him alone. Mr. Joe knows that he cannot leave someone like that alive as they get fun murdering people as if they are playing to be the hunter of society, but the injured man understands that he has never killed a person before in his whole life, as he notices the shaky hands of Mr. Joe. Mr. Joe doesn't know why the essences are coming out of his hands as he continues to tremble quite badly, knowing that he doesn't want to do it, and at that time he notices that his predator aptitude has reached the lowest of its limit, meaning that he will not be able to stay as a predator anymore. He thinks of what has been happening back in the days of his past, and realizes that he is just about to be the useless version of himself once again. The status board in front of him continues to manipulate him, and when he ends up fixing his mind, he slashes down the man's head in one strike as blood starts to splatter all around him. Soon JungWoo comes in to make him stop as he was reacting pretty badly to the situation, feeling like he is living inside the trauma of failure. He calms down Mr. Joe and he loses his spirit and ends up sitting down in the pool of blood, losing all his hope as he explains that he wasn't able to use his essence. JungWoo realizes that Mr. Joe is someone who cannot kill people, and he starts helping the man to walk down the road as they still have to reach their destination. After walking for a while, they reach some people and get prepared to ask for help, but as soon as they notice JungWoo and Mr. Joe's bloody faces, all of them get instantly alerted, calling out their whole backup in the location. As soon as the men notice JungWoo and Mr. Joe as strangers having bloody weapons in their hands, they decide to surround the duo in order to attack them all at once. The whole bunch of people start raging against the duo after sensing the situation while calling them both murderers, and they decide to attack at once. But before they are about to attack them at once, someone calls out for them to stop while running toward them, claiming that he has already forbidden them not to attack someone before checking and verifying. The man who stopped his men is the chief of the vigilante committee team 2 named Yang Junho, who then asks the duo to get their IDs, claiming that he needs to check them out before verifying their story. Junho then insists that it is necessary since the rise in crime has gone up since the morning, which is why he decided to check the IDs of the people who come into the town, and both of them decide to listen to his advice. Junho apologizes to JungWoo for not recognizing a neighbor as he belongs to the same town, and they begin to talk about the place they came from, asking if anything dangerous happened to them when they were trying to come all the way in here. As soon as Junho start talking about the murderers, JungWoo realizes that the man is still suspicious about their behavior, and telling him about murdering the thugs might create a new problematic situation for them. JungWoo claims that they have been seeing a lot of corpses along the way, and elaborates that he thought a monster might have appeared back inside the town. Just as the men hear about monsters, they get shocked, but JungWoo explains how he and his companion had to escape from their workplace to reach all the way here to protect them from the monster. JungWoo claims that the blood that is on their wrench came from the corpses, as they thought that there might have been monsters, and the leader of the group ends up falling for his tactics, as he ends up accepting both of them inside. Just as they continue to cross the road, Junho and his men start discussing the suspiciousness around JungWoo and Mr. Joe. Junho agrees with his men, but he isn't someone who is about to eradicate someone from the face of the earth without any kind of evidence, knowing that it will leave no difference between him and the murderers. On the way, JungWoo realizes that Junho thinks of them suspiciously, but they still didn't attack him, which makes him wonder about his characteristics. JungWoo doesn't realize why someone like him became a savior, while Junho looks like someone who deserves to be the savior according to his behavior and characteristics. When they move on close to JungWoo's house, Mr. Joe asks JungWoo if his father is okay, but he doesn't have any definite or accurate answer. Mr. Joe realizes that the relationship between him and his father might be bumpy. To that matter, JungWoo claims that his father is a unique person, and the conversation between them doesn't get that easy whenever they are together. When they finally reach the apartment of his father, JungWoo announces himself while entering with Mr. Joe, and the moment they notice JungWoo's father, they notice that he has a predator sign hovering above his head. Mr. Joe has a different look on his face as soon as he notices the sign, and JungWoo's father introduces himself as Min-gu as they both introduce each other. Min-gu starts to act weirdly after noticing that Mr. Joe is a predator, but JungWoo makes him lose the grasp of Mr. Joe's hand as soon as the situation gets intense. Min-gu then shows them the stock he had been making for long ago, and both of them are quite shocked to notice it, knowing that it is quite more than what they have expected. JungWoo notices blood dripping from some of the cans, and he gets skeptical about his father's behavior. His father claims that he is about to go alone, and living abnormally since the world isn't going at its normal pace, claiming that they should leave their separate ways. JungWoo doesn't object to his father and starts packing their own bags, knowing that they have to leave as soon as they notice the weapons. Suddenly, all of them hear the vigilante committee announcing their entry, claiming that they are investigating an incident at Cheongmyeong Mart as something sinister happened there, which is possibly done by JungWoo's father. Meanwhile, the vigilantes keep on knocking, announcing that they are inside the house to ask them questions about the incident that happened at the supermarket. As the people continue to knock on their door, JungWoo flips into an incident that happened in the past as his father was being tortured by some gang members for their principal and interest money. It seems that he had taken a bunch of money from the guys, and he couldn't pay them back because he was having a hard time running his business. When he couldn't pay them back anything, the guy that checked the whole house noticed that he had nothing left inside the house to pay them back, while JungWoo was suffering in one of the back rooms. The gang leader threatened him by saying that he will be facing the same fate that his wife had, as she decided to do suicide on her own accord. When JungWoo ends up hearing the conversation, his father tried his best to make him believe in the lie and only continued to agree with him as his father continued to tear up on his own on the ground. Min-gu opens the door to ask the men what they want from him, and the men serve the accusation in front of him, while still keeping their hand on the gun knowing that they might need it. Instead of flipping on the men, Min-gu starts to cooperate with the men and allows them all inside their house as if he is a dutiful citizen. As soon as the men enter the house, they decide to look for room by room, and one of them ends up finding the goods that were stolen from the supermarket. As soon as he makes the announcement, their leader tries to get the situation under his control. But as he grabs his weapon, half of his body gets severed from his lower part, and the one who made it happen is none other than Min-gu with his essence. When the wrath clams down, he interrogates the man, asking how many of them are left. It seems that there are around 30 of them left alive, and Min-gu claims that he will not be laying his hand on them, thinking that they are good people. Then he decides to threaten the man to leave, claiming that he will be leaving soon as well, to which the man agrees and runs away from his place in fear. When the men go away, Min-gu talks about someone who claimed that the vigilantes will not be coming, but they came in anyways. Min-gu hands the gun to his son JungWoo, and he insists that his father should be going with them, revealing that he was designated as a savior. But Min-gu insists, saying that he will not need some kind of revelation in life, and both of them part away while JungWoo leaves with Mr. Jo. Mr. Jo gets concerned about JungWoo's mental state and he tries to act like he will be fine. Then as soon as they get on the road, they notice that the horde of cats are running to reach someplace high and calling for them to join them, and they decide to listen to the cats. When they reach the place where the cats are headed, they find some kind of black hole-like entity, which is an access road. And out of that access road, a janitor reveals itself in an instant, and the cats prepare to attack the thing unitedly. As soon as the cats jump onto the janitor, the cats continue to get slashed down on the road, and the status boards continue to warn Mr. Jo and JungWoo to leave the town for their own safety. At the same time, JungWoo decides to leave his backpack to Mr. Jo to rush into the monster, and starts talking to the EA while asking for ways to terminate the access road as the situation is about to get way worse. It seems that the access roads can be terminated with sufficient essences, and the EA claims that the essence he has with him right now will not be enough for him at all, as he will be needing close to 10,843 essences for any access road. The moment JungWoo notices the number revealed in front of him, he feels that he was struck by lightning, as he only has 128 with him to terminate the road. On the other hand, the monster continues to plow down the cats attacking it, and when the situation gets hard to control for JungWoo, one of the cats starts to talk to him, claiming that he has the most essence, which gets JungWoo puzzled, not realizing how the cat would be able to see how many essences he has. JungWoo realizes that the cat is a savior, and the cat advises him to fight and runs up to the monster, while JungWoo keeps standing, losing his hope, knowing that even if he fights, there is no way he will be able to terminate the access road. JungWoo notices that the number of the cats fighting keeps on plummeting as they try their best to attack the monster, and as soon as the monster goes on to shift its target onto JungWoo, they attack the monster at once again, trying to save him as if they have some mission to fulfill. The cats hold down the monster at once by attacking it unitedly, and the cats shout at him to make an attack despite the fact that they will be dying at once if he ends up placing an attack on the monster. Realizing that listening to the cats will be the only way to face the issue, he uses his essence on the monster while trying to save the remaining cats on his own. The moment he holds one of the cats close to making it understand that there is no way they will be stopping the monster, the cats insist that they need to stop them as much as possible. When JungWoo insists that he doesn't have enough essence, the cats advise him to take their essence while advising that he should collect more if it's not enough. When the cats attack the monster again by holding it down, EA calls out to JungWoo, saying that listening to the cats is the most rational decision, and at the same time, the one-eyed cat makes him remember his mission as a savior once again. For the first time, JungWoo understood what the sorry in the beginning really meant, and the powerful strike that he makes on the monster ends up defeating it and destroying all the cats at the same time, only to create a rain of essence in the end. The wind stops blowing down after a while as the essence continues to fly down on the ground, and the status board in front of JungWoo illustrates that he is rank 4 in the affiliated region, which makes him remember what the one-eyed cat had said to him before it met its death. As the situation calms down, Mr. Jo asks about his condition, asking if he is hurt anywhere or not, and claims that they will have to leave the place soon, knowing that any kind of monster can come out soon. JungWoo notices the number of essences hovering above Mr. Jo's head and starts to prepare his essence, which makes Mr. Jo think that JungWoo is about to hit him with it, but it seems that a monster was behind him all this time. The monster dies down on the ground, plummeting some essence, and JungWoo starts to collect them one by one, knowing that he will be needing them soon for his mission. The number of essences starts to accumulate up to 1,421, and even though he has gone up to rank 3, he still needs a lot of them to reach 10,843, which will help him to terminate the access road, so the monsters cannot continue to come out. As JungWoo was hit with the realization, he advises Mr. Joe that they need to change their location since they can do nothing else in the same place, as there isn't any essence left to collect. When Mr. Joe gets confused about their next targeted location, JungWoo continues to think about it as well, knowing that he will have to try his best to reach his target. JungWoo continues to walk down the road as fast as he can, and Mr. Joe keeps on having a hard time reaching him, believing that they will faint soon if they keep up the same pace. JungWoo ends up listening to him and tells them they are about to move somewhere where there are a lot of people, which feels like a good idea to Mr. Joe, as he thinks that JungWoo's job will be easier as a savior if that happens. Mr. Joe thinks that somewhere like that will be Sadang or Snoo Station, which are towards Gangnam, and while they continue to head on following the subway line, a group of vigilantes meets them while heading to a huge explosion up north, from the place JungWoo and Mr. Joe came from a while ago. Even though JungWoo is talking to the group leader, his mind is still focused on collecting essence while continuing to make him lose his mind. Just the moment Mr. Joe insists to the group that they shouldn't be worrying about the explosion, JungWoo gets ready to charge the group with the essence he has as his power to blast them all away, knowing that he will have to fulfill the bar of 10,000 as soon as possible. As the whole group decimates into nothing, they leave a bunch of essences for JungWoo to collect, which gets Mr. Joe frustrated and makes him almost lose his mind, knowing that JungWoo is still a savior, but isn't following his moral code at all. At that time, the group leader still had a bit of life in him and was trying to check up on his buddy. After meeting with JungWoo, he couldn't help but wonder how someone like him ended up becoming a savior while he is nothing but a murderer. But JungWoo doesn't have any kind of regrets in him, thinking that he is doing something for some greater good, which makes the leader get his gun out to blast JungWoo's head from his body. The gunshot doesn't work at all, as JungWoo had already covered his face with the power of essence, and he ends up finishing the incomplete work of finishing off the man on the ground. As soon as JungWoo finishes his hasty work to be done, Mr. Joe instantly grabs his collar, asking if he has gone out of his mind this time, while JungWoo keeps up his straight face. JungWoo then ends up questioning Mr. Joe about what he is saying all of a sudden, which makes Mr. Joe yell at him, saying that he should be the one to explain the whole thing, as he is the savior himself, knowing that everything that he is doing right now is making no sense to him at all. He remarks on the fact that this must be something that a savior shouldn't be doing, and JungWoo continues to press the matter, claiming that maybe it is what a savior should do. He thinks that it is the responsibility of a savior to collect essences, even if it is via murders, knowing that it will be achieving something greater good for others. As soon as Mr. Joe calls it out, saying he is blabbering bullshit, JungWoo reveals that they have been misunderstanding the role of savior from the beginning, which leaves Mr. Joe in awe as his mind starts to go blank. Then JungWoo continues to explain that a savior's duty is to use essence to terminate all the access roads, and he points out the fact about even closing the gate they have witnessed before will be taking over 10,000 essences, and that can be done by grabbing onto any means possible. But even so, Mr. Joe isn't digesting the fact well, knowing that he will have to murder innocent people, while there is another option of joining forces with other saviors, as they can gather up together to terminate the access roads. After hearing the speech from Mr. Joe, JungWoo claims that there is no way of terminating the access roads just by gathering the survivors together, since it only works if the essences are gathered in one place. JungWoo reminds him about the Earth that apologized to them. And it did, for the fact knowing that someone will save the Earth, which will only be done by saviors with the qualifications. JungWoo is ready to do something that needs to be done, as he has already made the decision for it. JungWoo then announces that the murders of innocents will be a routine for him from now on, which makes Mr. Joe tremble in shock as he feels like he has lost his voice in the conflict. At that time, JungWoo thinks that keeping Mr. Joe with him will only be problematic, knowing that he doesn't understand the gravity of the situation as he does. As he is about to make up his mind to blast the head off of Mr. Joe, his phone starts to ring as it notifies him of a disaster alert message which insists that he should reach the community service center or government office as soon as possible. Not only does the message contain a matter of urgency, but JungWoo also notices the government has quoted the savior, which makes him think that they have already been acknowledging the situation. But he doesn't know what intentions they have with the saviors, which makes him think carefully, knowing that treading in the wrong direction will get him in trouble. Then the situation gets even more critical for JungWoo when he notices that the savior chat has also become a mess, as the saviors receive the disaster messages from the government directly. He notices that the people from around the middle ranks and above have the same thoughts as him, which proves that the battle for essence will become more and more intense because of it. JungWoo fears that even if he gets attacked while he is asleep, it will create a messed up situation since there is no way to turn back time. Now the only way for him to stay alive is to have someone he trusts behind his back that makes him think that Mr. Joe is the most viable option that he can take right now. But before he is about to approach Mr. Joe with his proposition, some janitors in the area raises their mouth to scream, revealing their positions, and JungWoo gets desperate to get out of the situation with him fearing that he will not be enough to protect him. Even though they have severe trouble in front of them, Mr. Joe tries to go debate against JungWoo, which makes him point his pen at him, leaving him with choosing to live or die. As soon as Mr. Joe notices the janitors coming toward them, both of them start running toward the Sadang station while the monsters continue to approach behind. The moment they arrive at the station, JungWoo predicts that someone might have done the work before he even arrived at the location. JungWoo senses that the blood hasn't dried yet, which makes him realize that the person who did something like that is obviously somewhere around him at that moment. JungWoo and Mr. Joe continue to wander around the ruins on the road to find out who the person was that collected all the essences before JungWoo as they watch the piled up dead bodies around them. While walking down the road, JungWoo thinks of organizing the information that he had obtained before the fight ensues between him and them. But at that same time, JungWoo realizes that his stamina is quite trashier than the others, and it takes 3 seconds for an essence that has been used to recover for him while he still has the risks of not having enough essence to protect himself when he uses up a big number of essences at one go. Just when he thinks of being aware of this all the time, he notices that he will barely have any charge on his phone and decides to stop by the mart for a while to look for portable batteries. As soon as they enter the place, they notice several severed limbs of some people, which looks like the janitors might have attacked the place beforehand and wiped them off the face of the earth. But as JungWoo notices that the entrances are still intact, it makes him feel like it was done by some person who swung their weapon around recklessly while there is no chance of goods being damaged. Also, the people who died back on the road to the station look quite similar to what was done in the mart, which indicates that all of the murders might have been done by the same person. JungWoo becomes sure that the person who did that might have been more skillful than him, which makes him feel like he should be focusing on collecting more and more essences always. Then as soon as Mr. Joe touches one of the dead bodies, they notice some unknown armed guys behind them as if they are ready to beat them down. The guy in the front with a baseball bat starts to stutter after meeting the both of them as he starts asking about their identities, claiming that they are on their territory. Mr. Joe gets his hands up to declare that they aren't here to fight against it as they are only looking for portable batteries as they notice the predator sign above his head. When they think that they shouldn't be listening to a predator as someone has their back, JungWoo notices him speaking about some specific person and confirms the whole information by looking at the number of essences gathered by them and finding out that all of it was done by someone else. Then, JungWoo comes in front backing up Mr. Joe to claim that Mr. Joe was the one who helped him while he was running away from a monster. The guys think that both of them are scheming something together, but JungWoo constantly tries to earn their trust, and also states that they do not have a single weapon as they are running from monsters. The guys then start to believe them as what they are saying is true, but at that moment, one of them starts questioning them about where they saw a monster, and JungWoo claims that it was at Hangundong, in the direction of Nakseongdae Station. As soon as the guys hear about the location, they continue to fear that their area will soon get dangerous as well. But they continue to think about their assigned quota and go back to their place. As soon as they move on, JungWoo thinks of avoiding them in the future for a while, snakingly following them, and Mr. Joe catches up on his intentions, which JungWoo agrees with as it is the truth. Just before the guys are about to enter their building, one of their guys surprises them by talking about the monsters and they all enter the building while JungWoo and Mr. Joe continue to follow them. As both of them converse with each other, JungWoo reveals the truth about the current world and makes Mr. Joe realize that he has no hope without him. The whole group inside the building starts talking about the monster rumor that is going around because of JungWoo. Some people think that the monster rumor is quite the truth and start shaking in fear, and some others think that it is some rumor going around between people as they have never thought that something like monsters can appear out of nowhere. Soon the same man from before wearing a yellow jacket comes in to make an announcement, so he continues to silence the whole crowd as he is about to talk about something important regarding the monster matter. He notices that the people gathered weren't able to find out anything that can confirm their suspicions, and at the same time they didn't even bring any food from outside. They explain that they have seen people walking around without weapons, but the man claims that containing evidence could have helped their situation. The man then declares that he is about to share some of his rations, and they continue to talk about some person whom they have to meet and report the information to him. But the guy that talked with JungWoo and Mr. Joe think that they have to think about the monster issue more instead of focusing on anything else. But the man makes it clear that they do not have to worry about monsters even if they are real. as they will be helped by that specific person anyways, and he will be helping them out as long as they continue to bring him food. But when the man is about to commence forward to continue on their path, one of them brings out his phone and starts showing him the videos of monsters online, and none of them can believe what they are seeing. But before they could decide any further, JungWoo makes his entrance while asking for their permission and trying to act friendly toward them. As people start debating with them, they confirm that JungWoo isn't someone who is with them, and the guy who talked to him in the mart before starts to feel suspicious about him, as he didn't expect him to reach their location. The yellow jacket man then realizes that JungWoo must be the one talking about the monsters, and he blames the guy beside him for bringing him inside, which makes the guy flip on JungWoo. He starts to interrogate JungWoo, questioning where he came from, and how did he reach them, while asking him about Mr. Joe, as he thinks that he might be the one ordering JungWoo to follow him. JungWoo states that Mr. Joe had taken all of their stuff and decided to move out somewhere else, which made him think that he might be able to live somewhere else with more people. He also apologizes to the guy for following him behind, and judging from his reactions, the man wearing a yellow jacket starts trusting him, as JungWoo starts looking like he is fearing for his life while having no luggage with him. Feeling as if he is about to get some information about the monsters, the man decides to act friendly toward JungWoo and reassures him, saying that he will be safe with them, while elaborating that they are being protected by someone who is acting as their sole leader. And in return, they provide him with their rations and food as they continue to show JungWoo their stockpile. JungWoo tries to confirm his suspicions and asks them if their leader is the one who demolished all of the people that are around them, and they answer in positively, as they were hoarding for more food. The yellow jacket guy claims that their leader is a good person, as long as they can bring more food. He offers JungWoo some information about their leader, and asks about monsters in return, so JungWoo decides to keep his act impactful, while scanning around the people to count their number of the essence. He counts all of them, and it is about 300 in total. He then starts to think about what to do, if waiting for their leader is a better idea or finishing them off already. Suddenly, his essences start to react badly, and he tries to suppress it to avoid suspicion, and the yellow jacket guy starts to be concerned about his situation. But as the man starts to reach his hand toward JungWoo, he remembers how he was attacked by the janitors, and his essence activates on its own, destroying the whole group of people around him, which is again witnessed by Mr. Joe. But at that time, someone starts walking beside Mr. Joe covered in blood, making him feel suspicious that something wrong had happened already. When JungWoo blasts through the people inside the building, a huge load of essence starts to drop from the skies as all of them continue to die down. JungWoo senses that he couldn't control his essence in the end, and knows that he should be hurrying up to collect the essence and get out of the building as soon as possible, since the leader can come out anytime soon to reach him. The rest of the people that were alive started to run away from him and get out of the exit in the second floor of the building. But when JungWoo goes on to collect the available essence in front of him, he senses some heavy strike of essence coming toward him, and he barely manages to block it with his hand fused with essence. It seems the man who attacked him was none other than Mr. Sang-hoon, who is supposedly the leader of the group inside the building, and the man has some sort of knife fused with essence. As soon as the leader arrives, everyone continues to mark JungWoo, asking for him to finish him off, and JungWoo senses the power infused in his knife, which is quite similar to what his father used for his protection against the vigilantes, revealing that people have different ways to use their essence. When the man notices that most of the rations are already destroyed by JungWoo, he goes berserk on JungWoo, which increases the size of the knife in an instant, and notices that the man only has 311 essences on him. JungWoo couldn't help but wonder how someone with only 311 essences would get him scared so much, and realize that he needs to learn the man's way of fighting to survive, as he seems to use most of his essence at the same time. After realizing the secret behind the man's technique, JungWoo strikes his knife, which gets divided in half, which reveals that once the knife gets destroyed, he will have no ways to strike. JungWoo uses the information against his enemy and blasts down the man in an instant as he dies, leaving all his essence, which leaves the survivors leaving hurriedly. JungWoo realizes he will have more than 2,000 in the end, and starts chasing the others while reflecting on his previous clash, as he will be needing more shields around him. JungWoo then stands in front of the survivor group and gets ready to blast them away, claiming that he is only doing his job. The people then begin to specify their jobs before the apocalypse to testify their importance, so they could be left alone as if they are serving their usage as a product. JungWoo then asks if there is any doctor in the group, but it seems that there is nobody who is a doctor, so he unleashes his power against them, and they get obliterated in an instant. When he finishes collecting all the essences, the status board congratulates him for being permitted as a pathfinder, which leaves him in awe. The EA announces that JungWoo has been granted the usage of pathfinder, which is about to act as his guide from now on. It seems that the main reason he was granted the role is because he had already killed more than 100 people, as if the EA is showing his report card to him while rolling out the achievements. As soon as the transformation because of the pathfinder starts to work, EA reveals 2 modes in front of him, as the access road tracking mode will indicate a maximum of 30 access roads and that can even be changed simultaneously, while the essence tracking mode will be indicating the direction of most of the essence in 10 kilometers radius, and it was directing him toward the Gangnam station. He senses that the first 2 ranked officers have gained the same ability as him, and starts to wonder if he will find stronger guys than him if they have a lot of essence. He thinks that worrying will only delay his mission, so he decides to head out and finds Mr. Joe concerned about him outside the building, but he calms him down, saying that he has already handled it by himself. But before they are about to head out there, Mr. Joe reveals that animals that escaped from the Seoul Grand Park had broken into the Supreme Court, and most of them are huge lions, which makes him feel like they should take a long way, but JungWoo suggests to do the opposite. As the lions are already heavily packed beings without essence, JungWoo thinks that beating them down will be a better choice, so meeting them before they get a lot of essence seems like a good option to him. When they arrive at the station, they see a lot of people gathering at the same place, and most of them have more than 100 essences. But there is also someone with more than 1,000 essence, and JungWoo decides to stay back for a while. But when the others notice Mr. Joe having a predator sign above his head, they start to create a ruckus. But the man with the most essence starts getting nervous by looking at JungWoo as if he could see his essence count. The man who is named Youngji starts to use the Savior chat to contact JungWoo as he is looking for his daughter, who is supposedly in the place where the lions have appeared. When JungWoo notices that more and more people are continuing to increase their rank, he gets nervous and starts talking to the man directly. When the people around them notice that both of them are chatting, they start to get annoyed and nervous, but as they are about to attack him, Youngji attacks them instead and finishes them off while collecting their essences. As he clears the zone filled with people, he announces that he knows JungWoo will not be keeping him alive. He claims that he cannot die in here, not before he finds his daughter, while he has 1883 essence in his grasp right now. When Youngji faces JungWoo face to face, JungWoo lets him know that there might be a slight chance for him to keep him alive if he didn't take all the essence, and it seems that Youngji understands the gist of his thinking, as he is a savior as well. Youngji understands that JungWoo isn't about to leave him be and decides to engage in a fight with him, while JungWoo feels like he knows what the result is about to be at the end of their fight. When JungWoo unleashes his true power on him, he expects that Youngji would be dying soon, but it seems that he is able to take out a strong enough shield to take him on, which surprises JungWoo, as he had to use the power of 2,000 essences. JungWoo soon understands the reason behind Youngji's survival, as he had condensed his essence into a fixed shape to increase durability and strength, but it ends up shattering down in front of him later on. Realizing that he will need more power to fight with JungWoo head-on, he runs to grab some essences that are now spread around him, and as soon as JungWoo notices him doing so and blasts Youngji away with his possessed essence. Then JungWoo notices something uncanny in numbers, as he saw the man having around 1,800 essences, but he only dropped 3 of them. The essence carried by the man has a deeper color than every other normal essence around him, and as soon as he takes in one of them, his accumulation number increases by more than 600 in an instant, which relates to the information of density. When JungWoo opens the Savior chat, he notices that there are no announcements related to the high-ranking saviors fighting and dying, even though it is quite impossible for people not to notice, since everyone with a rank below 4 has gone up a rank. Soon, the number 51 comes in to fill the void of the 50th role, and starts talking about a changed environment, which surprises JungWoo, as he wasn't expecting to see something like that, as the same type of message was delayed by the one-eyed cat whom he met previously when he was trying to close the gate. At the same time, JungWoo starts to feel like it will be a beast, since it is now ranked 50, as he rose to rank 2 after the number of essences exceeded 5,000. He thinks of testing it with a lion if he has to fight as they get in front of the entrance of the Supreme Court, feeling like the lawless era has finally started after all this time. As soon as they step inside the building, they notice severed human bodies everywhere inside, and the floor is painted with the blood of the victims. JungWoo thinks that looking for the animals will be a bad idea, while the animals will gather where people gather at once. So he starts calling out for people as police before Mr. Joe is able to grasp the situation. As soon as Mr. Joe realizes what JungWoo is trying to do, the survivors inside the building start coming outside of the rooms, thinking that the police have arrived to save them all. But surprisingly, the survivors are students, and among them, there is a girl named Choi Youngi, which makes JungWoo realize that the man named Youngie wasn't lying at all. But JungWoo isn't about to get any more considerate of the situation, so he gets out his pen to strike all of them, and Mr. Joe stops him from doing so. While both of them keep on arguing among themselves, lions on the upper floor start to appear, which makes JungWoo realize that his bait finally worked after all. When the lions come over to the border of the upstairs, they continue to stare at JungWoo and the others, while JungWoo continues to wonder where the lion is, as he can only see lionesses, which makes him wonder how many essences the animals might have in the first place. When he looks over to their heads, the total amount of essence doesn't make any sense, as they are supposed to collect essence since the morning. Before he is about to think about it any further, the animals continue to jump in front of him with the intentions to attack him head-on. People begin to run away from the place after seeing the animals face to face, while JungWoo keeps standing in the middle, surrounded by all the animals. JungWoo then speaks with the lionesses, asking them to bring out their leader, feeling that they might understand what he is talking about. And he notices that only one of them might be understanding what he is truly saying. As one of them jumps right at him, he finishes it off with his power of essence and then moves on to the others, only to leave the one in the middle which could understand his language. When JungWoo begins to speak to the one that is left in the end, suddenly the leader of the pack roars directly to him after coming out, and the animal that is facing him right now is the lion. And he also has a predator mark on hovering above his head. The lion calls him a trespasser, and the animal has a huge mark total of 1121 essence on him. And after noticing the count on the animal, JungWoo realizes that it might have been using the other essence to place a barrier around himself. But before JungWoo is about to analyze the lion even further, it starts coming toward him in a great speed, and teleports behind his head with the intention of finishing him off in a single attack. The lion ends up grabbing onto his hand with its mouth, while JungWoo creates a shield all over his body, and JungWoo realizes that he might have been dead if he didn't think of creating a barrier on himself at that moment. He continues to wonder what kind of power the lion has, which gave it such a power to move through the wind. And the lion isn't using a barrier around it, but to strengthen the body using all the essences. The barrier around JungWoo continues to break as the lion keeps on pressing its teeth against it, and at the same time, JungWoo takes some of his essence to hit the weak point of the animal, which leaves it in awe as it loses one of its feet because of the surprising attack. While the lion continues to groan in pain on the ground after losing its foot, JungWoo wonders if it could be useful if he was also able to strengthen his body, like the lion did before attacking him, which would get him such flash-like speed to move through the wind. Even after losing one of his limbs, the lion ends up standing on the ground to gather even more essence to recover the wound which was produced by JungWoo in the first place, but ends up losing his consciousness, proving that essence cannot be used to heal wounds. Then the same lioness from before comes in between them, asking JungWoo to let the lion live while shivering in fear, and JungWoo doesn't know what to say. But after thinking for a second, it seems that JungWoo isn't about to change his mind and prepares himself to throw another attack at them, while the lioness was about to say something to him once again. When the attack reaches out to both the lioness and the lion, the attack obliterates through them, and the ground they were standing on, and it seems that some essence that was carried by the animals ended up falling through the basement. But JungWoo doesn't act desperate while gathering more of the essence, as he knew that only the deep blue ones carry the most potential to reach a high number of the essence in the future. JungWoo then begins thinking that he needs to learn the same tactics shown by the leader lion, which makes him wonder when he will really get time to study and learn everything after all, as only surviving isn't that easy at the moment. Then the status board calls out to him, saying that he will be able to choose his own way of manifesting essences when the tutorial is completed, as the tutorial mode lifts when someone reaches more than 10,000 essences altogether. JungWoo starts to enrage after hearing that everything that he had been doing is just to clear a tutorial, which makes him feel like he only had to suffer through this much for nothing. But there is still another thing to fear, as there might be far bigger access roads than what he had seen last time, as he had killed countless people for something like a kid's game, proving how human life is quite a worthless thing to dream about, implying he might have to kill 1 million, or maybe even 100 million people to reach the end of everything. When he starts to contemplate everything as if he is already a murderer, a schoolboy comes up to him asking if he can turn himself into his disciple, as he is ready to learn from him. Then Mr. Joe comes in to say that the kids have seen him fight and they started dreaming as if they can become like him. And JungWoo stares at Mr. Joe while Mr. Joe asks if he can let the kids go away for this time. The kid continues to act persistent, saying that he will be going with him while claiming that it was his fate to meet him this fateful day. The kid continues to call him a hero, which he desires to become, but instead of caring about the boy's wishes, JungWoo asks Mr. Joe what he did with the survivors, and it seems that he had already told them to escape. The moment Mr. Joe finishes his sentence, JungWoo grabs his pen to get it near the kid as if he is about to finish him off, but he only warns him to go back home and reach his parents. But the kid insists that he will not be going away, claiming that he already knows that he will be soon dying anyway. If he does so, he doesn't want to do that. The boy thinks that JungWoo is only testing him to test his courage and claims that he is ready for the test, as he is about to be a hero like him. Then JungWoo claims that he is only misunderstanding him, as there is no such thing as heroes and only the weak people die while the strongest keep on standing. He blasts through the young man and asks Mr. Joe if he finds it alright to have another member in the group. When Mr. Joe asks if the new member is about to be his father, JungWoo claims that they will be needing a doctor with them, as he has already reached the conclusion that essences cannot help someone when they are wounded. Then Mr. Joe asks JungWoo about the matter of the lions talking, as the cats, and JungWoo asks if he didn't hear them out as well. And it seems that Mr. Joe could only hear growls instead of voices. After hearing the whole idea from Mr. Joe, JungWoo starts to find it weird as well, since only one of the lionesses could hear him out. And the status board then makes it clear, saying that there is a way to judge the sentience in essence, which acts as a translator for the people. Then soon it seems that some people are throwing baits in the Savior chat to lure the idiotic saviors to gain more and more essence to gather strength for themselves. But while they are piling up bodies inside, conspiring against newbie saviors in the rank between 50th, someone with a ranged weapon stands in the middle of the street with determination, while countless bodies lay around him, as if the man is standing in the middle of some graveyard of some sort. On the other hand, JungWoo and Mr. Joe soon reach someplace in the middle of the town and notice a huge pile of bodies, as if they have come to a junkyard. But instead of being filled with trash and electronics, the whole pile is filled with human bodies. When Mr. Joe wonders if it was necessary for them to do something like that, JungWoo thinks that the people who did this might have realized the whole scenario, as the declaration was given to the public via the government. Then Mr. Joe wonders if they will find a doctor somewhere like the surroundings of Gangnam Station, as the whole city is filled with dead bodies. But JungWoo is persistent about finding a doctor for his help, as they would have to continue looking for a doctor anyways. Soon JungWoo notices something notifying him through his pathfinder abilities, so he starts to follow some trail while advising Mr. Joe to stand his ground, as he thinks that he has reached their final destination for the day, while he notices a suited up man standing in front of him. The suited man looks like some sort of secret agent of some sort, as he is talking via the mouthpiece, and notices that JungWoo is heading toward him, and he advises JungWoo to stop. JungWoo notices that the man has 431 essences in his control as the man is talking to him. He advises JungWoo to wait for a moment, as he already knows that he came from a whole different region. JungWoo notices that the man has an ID card from DS Group and realizes that the man's company has taken control over the whole region, as the man continues to communicate via his mouthpiece, letting his companions know about JungWoo's presence. As the man finishes talking to the person on the other side, his leader reveals himself in front of JungWoo, as he and his companions both have 322 and 126 essences in their store, respectively, while JungWoo realizes that the man was calling for a savior all this time. It seems that the baits that were sent by the saviors reached out to JungWoo, and he realizes that even though the people promised that it wouldn't be a trap, it ends up becoming quite the opposite, as it starts to feel like some sort of scam. JungWoo speaks out to the man with the nickname of Armed, who is supposedly the leader of the group, and the man then soon realizes that JungWoo must be a VIP, which makes him start to lose his shit. JungWoo then notices that the number of essences that they all have altogether must be quite little for people like them, as they are using the chat to lure others to come up to them. As the Pathfinder was still acting up, the range of it is about 10 kilometers, JungWoo notices a man wearing a leather jacket behind the man, as he is carrying a huge steel weapon on his shoulder, and this person has a total of 3,015 essences in his store, as he is the one who had been collecting all of it. When JungWoo realizes what they have been doing, JungWoo prepares to throw an attack on the men, but the leader of the group is too scared to let his man work accordingly, as he is nervous to do anything. JungWoo then doesn't think of waiting and starts threatening them with his power, while the leader continues to lie on his own so he could be saved from death. Even though JungWoo knows the truth behind the whole story, the man begs JungWoo to listen to his proposal, and claims that to keep the society intact, they have been looking for people like him to make sure they can pull it off, as they are about to sponsor JungWoo. It seems that the man is ready to fund JungWoo for food, accommodations, and even finance so he can live the life of royalty. But before the man is about to finish his sentence, JungWoo unleashes his power against the two men, as he thinks that closing access roads is more important than having this much money. Then JungWoo asks the jacket guy why he decided to act like a corporate dog if he understood the meaning of life, and the guy unleashes his attack on JungWoo in anger. But JungWoo keeps on standing tall in front of the man, and finishes him off as if he is some little insect in front of his goal. Suddenly, the status board announces that JungWoo is nearing the collection of 10,000 essences, so he should be holding himself. As soon as JungWoo receives the notification of reaching the checkpoint of 10,000 points, he collects another essence with a deep blue color, and the Earth notifies him that he is the first person to finish the tutorial. Not only that, but also he is the #1 in the whole affiliated region right now, having up to 10,707 essences in total. At that moment, he starts calculating how much the other top-ranked saviors have right now in their grasp, and Mr. Joe starts rushing toward him to check up on him as he was concerned standing alone in the same corner where JungWoo told him to stay. It seems that Mr. Joe is concerned about the notification appearing that someone has finally finished the tutorial for the first time ever. JungWoo couldn't think of how Mr. Joe would see the same notification as well, and realized that the Earth window isn't for him only as the others can see it too, which typically means that when the change finally appeared through the status board, it was seen by everyone in the office. Mr. Joe then asks JungWoo if he is the one who finished the tutorial, and JungWoo then clarifies himself as being the first person to finish the tutorial as was already expected by Mr. Joe. He then goes on to the Savior chat to see the reaction of the others, which reveals that everyone else is also confused as none of them knew about the first phase being the tutorial in the first place. He then assumes that the notification was sent to everyone, reflecting that they should also hurry up to catch up to the first person, despite the fact that nobody needs to become a savior to know that they are up to some mission-completing achievement that represents that they will have to continue correcting their vision. The whole incident means that to survive, they will have to fight no matter who they are facing and no matter what kind of person they are facing in front of them. Morality doesn't mean anything in the first place, as everyone has to kill their opponent to have their grasp on their essence count as soon as possible to stay alive. Also, the conditions to pass the tutorial haven't been spread throughout the country, which is likely to create more chaos and mess in the future, as people will continue to get desperate sensing the danger. JungWoo thinks that there is no way he should be lowering his guard despite the fact that he is none other than the first-ranked savior to finish the tutorial. Mr. Joe then lets JungWoo know that the internet is filled with content related to the tutorial, as everyone is quite concerned about the whole incident. JungWoo thinks that it is some kind of media broadcasting the whole thing, but Mr. Joe reveals that it is some kind of internet live stream being run by some enthusiastic people. Also, the live stream has a huge number of viewers, as they are racking up numbers at the same time, reflecting on the fact that everyone is concerned about the tutorial incident. JungWoo couldn't fathom that people would still have time to think about live streaming even in this type of trouble, as the world has changed constantly, which makes him think about what the general audience is thinking. In the end, JungWoo feels like people are like this because they are scared and unaware of it at the same time. If that didn't happen, people like Mr. Joe wouldn't act like how he is acting. And while he is busy in his thoughts, the status board calls out to him asking if he has finished all his businesses, as it is ready to elaborate on the tutorial passing rewards as soon as possible. As soon as the status board starts working, JungWoo starts to feel the power getting deep inside his body, which makes him feel weird and familiar at the same time. It seems that JungWoo has gotten 3 new types of abilities that were presented by his enemies before, and now he can use all of them at the same time but more efficiently, crossing the boundaries created for humans. JungWoo's eyesight and hearing abilities have increased deliberately, which then makes him understand that his 5 senses have been upgraded at the same time. When the accustoming finishes for JungWoo, the status board gets ready to explain its next reward to him, and it is Ark, representing Noah's Ark from the Bible, which appeared before the world ended with a flood. The status board then represents Ark as a special benefit for the saviors who have succeeded in terminating an access road. And now JungWoo will be able to choose 10 animals to be passengers of the Ark per terminated access road. The selected animals can only be beings that have come through the access roads onto Earth, but there is still another thing to worry about, which is that if the savior dies, the safety measures given to the animals end up being broken in the end as the restriction gets lifted up. JungWoo then realizes that the question that weirded him out the most was because of the Ark function, but he starts to have a hard time guessing why they would have such a function as Ark, which makes no sense to him as the Earth is about to be destroyed anyways. He then starts to reminisce about the assumption made by the people from DS Group, and realizes the Earth didn't just want to live simply how it was doing from the start, as it was hoping to have more as a planet with life. Then the passengers of the Ark are the minimum infrastructure needed to recover the Earth how Noah acted in the time of Earth's revival, as it had to kill lives for the continuation of lives, which all feels ironic to JungWoo. When JungWoo asks the status board if it is possible for him not to take any passengers to save, and it seems that it is also possible, and he will also be able to remove the passengers already on board, which is about to contradict his theory of not taking anyone in the first place. JungWoo then starts to think of what kind of standards he should be following in the first place to take the people on board, as he cannot just start deciding them haphazardly out of nowhere, as every decision made by him is about to have an effect inside the lives of his country. JungWoo then asks Mr. Jo if they can finally rest for a while as he is tired, and he starts thinking of where to rest as the Pathfinder is notifying him of enemies in the range of 10 kilometers. After thinking for a while, JungWoo thinks of staying inside the DS group building, which surprises Mr. Jo as he starts to suggest that they would have been making a better decision by choosing an abandoned building instead. But JungWoo then confirms to Mr. Jo that he already knows that there will be no potential danger for them there, as there is only a chance of survivors belonging to the DS group, who were being controlled by the DS group from the beginning. Mr. Jo then claims that it will still be dangerous for them as they are a huge group of people, as there are some chances to have some backup packed by the corporate leaders. Mr. Jo realizes that JungWoo had been calculating everything before making a single decision, and starts to feel like he has never seen JungWoo like this as he is now a sole survivor alone. Mr. Jo feels like his mind and thoughts are also altering at the same time, even though he protested JungWoo's activities some hours ago, and while he is deep inside his thoughts, JungWoo advises him to hurry up as they will be needing some sleep as soon as possible. When JungWoo gets in front of the entrance, he is surprised by the people inside the building as if nothing has changed for them, which truly reflects the amount of wealth people can have in one life. JungWoo starts to realize that DS Group has the most knowledgeable people available in their grasp. They must not be feeling how the people outside are feeling in the first place, which is only normal for them to react with nothingness. At the same time, JungWoo starts to think if the group is also controlling high-level saviors, but it still feels impossible for him at the same time. Knowing that JungWoo will need to sleep soon, he decides to show off his skills for a while to reach his target as the guards outside the building start pointing their guns at him. While replying to the men, JungWoo claims that there will be no one coming for them from the Gangnam station as he has already cleared the area. Soon in an instant, there is only one guard left in the area, and the man starts to call out the other guards in the lobby needing assistance. Then multiple guards start coming out of the building and everyone gets out their guns to point at JungWoo, sensing the danger in front of them. All this time, JungWoo was wondering what confidence the men had to protect the building, but now he realizes that the guns and armor are the main thing that continue to make them believe that they can still survive while all of them have so low essence in their grasp, as someone will be needing at least 1,000 essence on them to block the bullets. People continue to pile up in front of the armed guards of DS Group. Then suddenly one of the guards starts asking JungWoo if he is a savior, hoping that JungWoo will have a conversation with them, but without even thinking for once, he ends up slashing down the whole crowd of guards standing at one point. A single strike placed by JungWoo wipes the whole floor of guards as he continues to stand in front of the glass door, while countless essence continues to fall down in front of him. As soon as he finishes collecting the essence, JungWoo advises Mr. Jo to come with him, knowing that the place inside will be safe for them. JungWoo and Mr. Jo enter the building to notice two receptionists staring right at them, feeling like they are the ones who are left in the whole lobby. But JungWoo then notices that one of them is trying to use the emergency button to save themselves, and even if the guards come down, he knows that they will probably be coming through the elevators, so it shouldn't be so difficult for him to deal with them at once. When JungWoo finishes his calculation, he asks the ladies about the total number of people residing inside the building, but one of them starts to come in the middle trying to scare him, which makes him feel that the lady must be quite beefy to protest his questions like that. He starts to think how he would have taken the lady as someone attractive if he wasn't in a situation like that, but he realizes that he cannot be taking someone as the woman in his arc just because of that one single reason. Soon JungWoo starts to hear noises coming through the elevators, realizing that the backup has arrived. As the elevator drops down in the end, countless guards start to come outside of them at once, while JungWoo stands behind them to behead them in every single strike with his essence abilities. JungWoo starts acting carefully not to break the elevators while attacking them as he cannot take the stairs later when he needs them. When Mr. Jo stands with the ladies scared shitless, he confirms that JungWoo is the one savior that their company was looking for, and he is none other than the #1 ranked savior in the whole region to be exact. When JungWoo finishes his business with the guards and stands in front of the women, the beefy one starts to shake in fear with the one behind her as she claims that she is ready to do anything to save her life. JungWoo then questions what the woman meant by anything and asks if she knows what she is meaning by that, but she continues to speak the same thing over and over again to save herself. JungWoo starts to rethink what to do as the woman is so desperate that she is ready to give away her life to save someone else behind her while rejecting the idea of death. When JungWoo starts to lecture her on how the world isn't what it used to be, and even if she survives, there is no guarantee that the world will be worth living in the end. But even before he is about to finish his sentence, the woman embraces him to rejoice with the trust that she will have a chance to continue living from then on. But JungWoo throws the woman away by separating herself from him for the fact that he had nearly embraced her, giving him such a shake in a short moment, which gave her enough opportunity to use her gender as a lure for him. JungWoo unleashes his essence ability against both of the women to blast them away, and asks Mr. Jo to find the emergency alarm for the fact that they cannot look for everyone left in the building, so it will be better for them to gather the crowd in the same location. Mr. Jo then listens to JungWoo make use of himself, and as soon as they find the emergency alarm, they ring it to continue clearing through the whole building, as they are mostly done with it in the first place, which racks up JungWoo's number of essence up to 12,441, meaning that he will be able to close small access roads right now. Mr. Jo then asks JungWoo if they should start looking for access roads the next day, and JungWoo claims that they will have to finish assessing the situation first, which is the most necessary task for them right now. But at the same time, JungWoo thinks that closing an access road will be able to show them the function of the arc, which makes Mr. Jo wonder what the arc really is, as he has never heard of it ever in his whole life. JungWoo then states that he will be explaining the arc topic later while they are resting, as they need to get out of their ruined clothes as soon as possible since they are soaked with blood. Soon they get in front of the DS president's office, and JungWoo thinks of looking for the files on the DS group's structure or strategy, and instructs Mr. Jo to look through the rest area if it is possible, knowing that there can be some secret files in there. The more JungWoo starts going through the files of the DS group, he is quite hopeless not being able to realize where the wealth of the company is lying inside or the plans for their future. At that moment, Mr. Jo reveals the secret room of the company's president, and both of them are surprised to see how well done the restroom is. Tired JungWoo ends up sitting on the chair while advising Mr. Jo to head inside the washroom first, and they fix on who will be awake through the night to keep the night's watch. While JungWoo is sleeping through the night, Mr. Jo continues to wonder how he will be keeping it all up, wondering about the preparation of JungWoo. As Mr. Jo continues to feel the shakedown for not being able to do anything, suddenly a disaster alert alerts him about something worse happening, as the government has claimed that they have found a way to close off all the access roads. JungWoo grasps the fact that the live stream is about to start soon, and Mr. Jo predicts that if the government has already pronounced its ability to terminate access roads, they might have been collaborating with the second and third saviors to do so. JungWoo thinks that it is possible according to the number of essences they have collected, and it seems like a matter of concern to Mr. Jo, as he thinks that the people committing crimes until now will start to suffer if something like that happens. But JungWoo claims it is only normal, as the saviors trying to close the access roads are about to act as public officers, while the government will continue to calm the citizens down by advertising the power that they have chances to regain control over the country, so they keep their composure and follow all the rules and regulations. But since an access road of the tutorial takes almost more than 1,000 essences, it means that some people will have to die to be able to collect the essences they lack, and at that time the government will not be able to condone murder at all. When the savior ends up losing all their essence, they will be painted as a former murderer who is inconvenient for them to deal with at all. Mr. Jo understands the gravity of the situation that they are in, and JungWoo reveals that they might not have been looking for a savior in the first place, as the government said they will be blocking access roads and not terminate them. As the broadcast starts, Kim Young-tae starts the announcement that the government has successfully blocked the access roads that appeared all over the country from 8 a.m. the previous day. JungWoo notices that the government is only trying to block them all off with military forces, as it is impossible to terminate the gates, while monsters continue to pour out like rain. As the monsters continue to pour down, the military gets started with their lock and load shooting right at them, and Mr. Jo and JungWoo both are shocked to see that the guns have an effect on the monsters, which isn't anything weird in the first place. As the shooting ends, the countless number of monsters are dealt with in seconds, but none of them dropped any essence, which seems quite sane according to the information given by the administrator. JungWoo starts to guess around the formula that the janitors are trying to steal the essence in itself, while the government is happy to see that their actions have worked well through the end. The government is quite confident about the situation, as they feel like they have enough ammunition to defend the country for not only 42 days, but 10 years. They continue to keep the citizens calm, while JungWoo feels like they are only trying to ease their minds constantly while the streets continue to get out of order because of awakeners. Mr. Jo then suddenly calls out to JungWoo as something weird starts to happen in the broadcast, as the access road in it starts to act up while coloring it with proper red. Suddenly, the earth lightens up for Mr. Jo and JungWoo to make an announcement claiming that their second day has finally arrived, and it is their time to have some new news according to their situation. The earth soon announces to everyone that the second day has come, and JungWoo realizes that it is the same as the declaration that appeared the day before in the morning. On the other hand, Mr. Jo is having a hard time coping with the situation, as he doesn't realize what the earth is trying to say to him. When the earth reveals 3 sets of announcements, JungWoo notices and grasps the fact that the monsters that weren't able to enter the Earth before are about to enter right now since the restrictions have been lifted. When that wasn't the issue at all, JungWoo realizes that if monsters like janitors keep entering Earth, they are about to lose all their essences within just 17 days, and 41 days will be something impossible to think about, as there are 41 days remaining until planetary closure. Also, he doubts that the essences that have been taken out of the planet cannot be recovered, which means that they need to protect them one way or another. While JungWoo and Mr. Joe are coping with their newfound situation, countless military personnel arrive with tanks and guns for some reason, while something was raining from the skies as they were trying to shoot it with their gun. As soon as the new monster unravels itself from the face of the Earth, it slaps the military personnel on the ground with some kind of tentacle, and JungWoo realizes that the creature that he is seeing isn't a janitor at all. Something bigger has entered the fray. The monster continues to tear through more and more men as they try to fight it, and blood and limbs are scattered everywhere at the scene. It seems that JungWoo and Mr. Joe were watching the whole scene unfold inside the room they were staying the day back. As the screen goes pitch black, Mr. Joe is kind of speechless because of the scene that he had to watch until the end. When JungWoo explains the reason why a monster stronger than a janitor has entered, Mr. Joe couldn't help but feel battered, as even a janitor is quite heavy for him to handle, as he has never dreamed of defeating even one of them. JungWoo realizes that to survive against the monsters, everyone will have to become awakeners themselves and fight, and also there is an exception to that. They will have to come aboard a strong Savior's Arc, since there is no other way to fight back the monsters otherwise. As they both continue thinking about the Arc, JungWoo gets notified by the status board that special benefits for people who are leading are about to be activated, and he is given an opportunity to choose his own special benefit as the rank 1 survivor. JungWoo couldn't grasp the fact of what is beneficial for Earth in this whole thing, as it is better for Earth not to provide any such perks in the first place. Suddenly, a timer of 10 minutes appears in front of him, and in that time range, he will have to select his perks, which start with a commonly special benefit, and some are far better than others. Continuously, countless of them start to appear in front of him as if the Earth is playing with him while recollecting himself as a joke. Soon he gets reminded that only 7 minutes are remaining, 29, and he starts thinking deeply about the option that gets you a chance to sacrifice a savior, only to accept it in the end. As soon as he accepts the special benefit, he is presented with countless other perks, which include the feature of incognito, which will let him hide from the trespassers completely. But realizing that he doesn't have much time, he ends up selecting without thinking twice. After thinking for a while, JungWoo makes the decision of selecting all sight for his own benefit, as he thinks that setting up the basics is the most important thing right now. As soon as he clicks on the title, he starts hearing some sort of screeching sound, making him feel as if it is tinnitus. But after some time, he realizes that it was the sound made by small lights and sounds around him, and all of them are feeling quite a bit more amplified than before. Mr. Joe notices the weird behavior and deteriorating condition of his health, which makes him ask if JungWoo is feeling bad, but JungWoo insists that he shouldn't be worried about him. JungWoo now feels like he is more sensitive to his surroundings, even though he also notices that the status board might have blocked off his bodily connections from the universe by injecting the information into his brain directly. The Earth then notifies JungWoo that the top saviors of each region have now completed their special benefit selection, and it also advises him that according to the survey results, one person amongst the special benefit selectors will be murdered randomly to keep the balance. He notices that most of the people in the Savior chat are quite frustrated by the saddening news, while the others are ranking up quite faster than they ever did previously to make their name. JungWoo feels that those people might not be someone ordinary, noticing how faster they can crank up, which makes him wonder if they are about to receive the termination authority as well. Soon, the Earth notifies JungWoo and Mr. Joe that the common special benefit will be activated soon, which is none other than the Commence Murder perk, which carries roughly 1 in 195 members, which gets JungWoo under immense pressure, not knowing how it will turn out in the end. Soon the notification comes in saying that the savior of another region has been annihilated, and JungWoo releases a deep sigh knowing that he will get to see another day. At the same time, JungWoo is annoyed for not being able to feel how the special benefits truly work, as a savior who was at the top of a country died, but he still cannot feel it working, as if he is in some sort of hallucination. He then also remembers that the Earth didn't claim the dead savior's whereabouts. He then notices that the special benefits can be reserved, while he realizes that keeping his rank at the top will be the only way to save himself from this time on. After knowing that the government has properly failed to defeat the monsters, the others will start to try and collect essences in full force, as JungWoo needs to find talents to take under his wing before they get devoured by someone else. When he activates his skill, He is asked if he knows the person whom he is trying to find, as if it is some sort of survey, and it seems that JungWoo has started looking for a surgeon or doctor of some sort for his future plans, knowing that essences cannot heal one's wounds when they are wounded, not to mention there are viruses and infections as well. He starts to mention the range of age for experience, and when it finishes, the searching starts, and he starts to hear some kind of screeching noise once again inside his mind. While the search continues, they end up finishing their mealtime, and the location of the target doesn't seem to be too far from their location, which pleases JungWoo. When they get to access the elevator, they realize that it is running automatically as if there are more people in the building along with them, but there is always something worse. As soon as the elevator opens, JungWoo recognizes the man who is actually the real deal, and he is none other than the head of the business strategy division, Kim Yong-hyun. The man starts begging JungWoo and Mr. Jo, while apologizing for the bad manners they were shown yesterday, knowing that the company has faced a great deal of casualties. When JungWoo questions an executive coming in, the man makes it clear that no matter what, they will never be sacrificing themselves for the pawns. The man offers to have a small conversation with both of them, and JungWoo doesn't realize why his meeting with them is wise to him, as it is almost like committing suicide for nothing. Kim explains that he came to their location on a helicopter after riding for 2 hours from Busan, while claiming that they can get many facilities from their company as a savior. JungWoo knows that the facilities are quite mesmerizing, but there are risks of becoming a pawn of the corporate chain. Suddenly, JungWoo starts threatening Kim to know about the helicopter's location and about the pilot, which makes the man make it clear that he is the one who drove the helicopter. When JungWoo threatens the man, he explains that it will be quite hard for them to operate the helicopter without them, as he is the only pilot to be existing in their location, while JungWoo is satisfied that he was able to get his hands on a helicopter operator for a long time. The man then explains that he is here to make his work easier, and executing him will only make things harder, so he shouldn't be doing that at any cost, which makes JungWoo wonder that the man has already thought it through the end, as the man is quite important as he needs a surgeon or doctor. He then announces that he will present the man with a choice, which is to either abandon his company and come with him, or else he can just die inside the building along with the other men in his company, as he is allowing him on the Ark if he comes with him. Kim is surprised after hearing about the Ark, and in the next scene, all three of them can be seen walking toward the exit as they need to terminate the access road soon enough. While walking, Kim continues to persuade JungWoo not to abandon DS Group, mentioning that only having more members will have him the upper hand against everyone. Then JungWoo mentions that if that happens, he will be listening to his advice, as only the chief executives will be put first, but he still doesn't have any wish to become their puppet. The word puppet makes Kim think for a while, and JungWoo advises him to come with him, if he has the confidence to survive the outside world. Otherwise, he will have to think of dying soon enough. Kim insists that finding a capable pilot in the middle of Gangnam will not be that easy for him, and makes his decision to assist JungWoo, having the condition of boarding his wife to board the Ark, though both of them divorced last year. JungWoo gets puzzled about the situation and asks if she would agree to his proposal, and he claims that he will be able to convince her if he had 30 minutes including the travel time. As the man begins to think it through, JungWoo realizes that someone like him can have the confidence to beat through the access road, and he thinks of allowing him to become his companion. JungWoo advises that he should be accepting rejections if she suggests the idea of rejection to him, and Kim respects his point of view, making a promise to JungWoo in the end. Even so, JungWoo lets everyone know that he still needs to pick up the person of interest before making their way to the helicopter, who is none other than the doctor or surgeon that he targeted with his special ability. When they reach the location, it seems nothing more than a ghost town, while JungWoo wonders if they might have seen the broadcast, but there are people who are supposed to be alive and wandering around in the location. Suddenly they notice a man with a kid, which makes Kim question what JungWoo is about to do right now. JungWoo wonders why the man isn't supposed to be around here and notices that he has 441 essences on him, before asking about the mysterious man's identity. The man claims that he is from around Jonggo, and asks if he can pass the location and the number of essences on the child, making JungWoo realize that the man made his child go through the survey in the same way as well. Before he is about to obliterate the man, Kim stops him from doing so as there is a child with him, and the man tells him to wait as he blindfolds his kid with the hoodie, only to jump onto JungWoo to attack with his supersonic strengthening ability. But JungWoo ends up exploding the man with his power, which is seen by the kid who was waiting for his dad to come back for him, while JungWoo keeps watching him over. The father of the kid dies down on the ground after releasing all the essence that he was carrying, and when the situation calms down, JungWoo apologizes to the child as he had to see something like that. But before he is about to attack the child as well, Kim stops him from doing so as he understands the principle of everything that he is doing, and points out that he doesn't have to do something like that to a child as well. JungWoo doesn't think that the motive is right because if the children are to be spared, they will be needing their parents to survive, which typically means that they will have to be spared as well. Even so, Kim doesn't think that it isn't the way how the arc should be, as they will all be left with nothing in the end destination if they continue to survive even by killing the children, as if there isn't any common sense and order existing in the world. JungWoo then brings up the topic of conscience, as he had mowed down Kim's co-workers with the same principle, and he will even finish him off if it is necessary for him to do so. Kim releases JungWoo's hand, claiming that he understands, and when JungWoo is about to blast away the child, he stops in the middle only to claim that he should be running away if he wants to keep surviving. The child then immediately runs away from the location, and JungWoo insists that it isn't about to be the last time he is doing something like that, but if Kim cannot stay and watch from behind him the next time, he will be his next target. Kim accepts the order, keeping it in his mind. As they begin their journey into the building once again, JungWoo has a total count of 12,883 essences in his status board, but it doesn't seem like enough to him if he compares the number of access roads. JungWoo thinks that he should be killing off his emotions more often because he has to execute more people often in the future, even if it is a kid standing in front of him. As soon as they reach the 5th floor of their targeted building, they notice that a bunch of crowds has gathered in front of them with various weapons, and among them, he needs someone who has the expertise of a doctor. After looking through his pathfinder ability, he soon comes in front of a blonde old woman sitting down on the ground, and the person is quite surprised that JungWoo managed to find her. The woman claims that she specializes in urology, and JungWoo is quite frustrated to hear that, but at the same time, he knows that the Earth isn't about to make a wrong assumption at any cost. JungWoo thinks that she might have some underlying ability in her, or she isn't about to explain the truth to him. At the same time, he still thinks that there might be someone else who is a doctor as well, and calls out the people for that reason, as he is in need of an expert. When the crowd gets to know that the old woman is a doctor, people start to mock the woman for having a dull face, and JungWoo announces that he also needs an engineer, which makes a huge guy ask about his identity, which angers JungWoo so much that he blasts him away. He asks the same question again, which makes a nerd-looking guy come up to him claiming that he is an accountant and he seems to know how to use tools as well. Just like that, people continue to come up to him to prove their worth just to survive. Suddenly, a woman calls out to be a nurse, which makes the old woman question her identity, and it seems that the woman is named Yang Hyoshin. After hearing about Yang's identity, the old woman decides that she will be useful and promising that she will be serving under JungWoo properly. But in exchange, she requests JungWoo to execute all the people that mocked her. In the next scene, JungWoo is seen collecting a bunch of essence from the ground, and he is having a hard time contemplating how the doctor woman wasn't even fazed for once after demanding that she wanted all her bullies to die. He feels like she is someone who is quite closer to being a full-fledged psychopath than just being unusual. But in the end, he starts to think that it might not even matter to him, as he has managed to get everything that he needed, which is a doctor and a capable nurse of treating in case of emergencies. And let's not forget about the helicopter pilot Kim along with his most trustworthy companion, Mr. Jo. JungWoo commences that they need to head to Hangundong, as he is quite eager to know what happens when he terminates an access road, but at the same time Mr. Jo wonders if the number of people can cause a problem in the first place. Kim claims that if it were a problem, he would have told them beforehand, as the helicopter can fit at least 6 or 7 people at once. While Kim was talking to JungWoo, Mr. Jo realizes that Kim's perspective and behavior have changed a lot since the last time, and he is truly acting like he is communicating with someone far superior to him. But he decides to accept the theory, as he already knows that there is no way to change anyone's mind when someone truly believes that JungWoo is the savior for them and nobody else. When they arrive in front of the helicopter, Kim announces that the helicopter is usually used for medical purposes, so there are basic medical tools and equipment built in, and they can even be taken out despite the fact that he was warned. Also, there is no reason to rethink fuel, as every DS building rooftop is filled with fuel reserves. But it seems the fuel might be an issue, as the tank of the helicopter is quite small, which would let the helicopter have 3 hours of performance. JungWoo realizes that the trips would be shorter than he thought, and there is also an issue regarding the helper, as anyone cannot just refuel the tank without breaking the helicopter, which will be needing a professional. JungWoo realizes what Kim is trying to mean, as he knows that it is the sole reason why they need to keep him alive. Other than that, he truly has no effect on their mission. When the introduction of Kim finishes, the old woman notices that the young nurse named Yang is rather scared about getting up on the helicopter, and she even warns her not to get in the way of JungWoo, knowing that it will never be that fruitful for her. While shaking in fear, Yang gets inside the helicopter and Kim decides to start the vehicle, and inside the vehicle, the old woman introduces herself as Choi Dong-hoon to JungWoo. But JungWoo thinks that the name usually would belong to someone who is a guy. JungWoo claims that she has rather an interesting name, which seems rather usual to Choi, and it seems that the woman is turning 42 the current year. JungWoo feels like she is quite weird compared to the fact that she doesn't talk much and isn't unsociable at the same time, while her hands are quite softer than what he had imagined. Soon, Kim claims that they will be in Hangundong, which reminds JungWoo of the horrifying janitor attack, as he is rather excited to see what the area looks like right now. Suddenly, Yang starts to get uncomfortable, and JungWoo notices that part of the ground is completely pitch black, and none of them can see anything at all, as if something is wrapping around the whole location. JungWoo instructs Kim to slowly go down, and the administrator claims that the things that they can see now are farmers and resonators, and the power resonating through the monsters starts to make everyone vomit, including Kim, as he is losing consciousness while failing the control. As everyone inside the helicopter continues to lose their consciousness while vomiting, JungWoo is trying his best to get them back to their senses, and mostly Kim, as he is their only hope to survive the situation they are facing right now. He doesn't know what is happening with them, but all that he knows is that if everyone continues to suffer like that, they are about to die at the same time. He doesn't know why he is the only one having no effects, and all he knows is that there is only one thing that is different between them and him. All he knows is that they all have to survive, so he then uses his essence to carry the helicopter upwards, and when the situation gets better for Kim, he ends up carrying the helicopter upwards by forcing his hands on the steering. When they end up surviving from the situation, JungWoo realizes that Kim is a useful person in their cause, and he is about to be quite useful for them in the future. Soon, they hear the eye-ringing sound once again, but Mr. Joe notices that he doesn't feel like vomiting like the last time, and it seems that the reason why they do not feel like vomiting is that JungWoo has been using his essence to create a protective layer above them. JungWoo is relieved to see that his plans worked, and the fact that he needs to carry out creating a protective layer to keep them all alive, but he is concerned if he can have enough essences to carry out attacks. When JungWoo asks Kim about the landing area, Kim claims that they will be able to land on the wide building to their 5 o'clock, and they will have to land on the rooftop. After landing on the building, he remembers what the administrator said about the monsters and realizes that the horn out of the building must have been the resonator, but he still doesn't seem to look at any of the farmers, and at that time, Choi starts to question the physical strength of his protective layer. JungWoo starts to get concerned about the number of essences, as he will be needing 10,483 of them to carry out his mission, and he will be left only with 2,300 in the end, which is nowhere near enough to protect people at the same time. He knows that he cannot just leave and go, as they will be swiped then and there if any of the janitors appear, while there are chances that a savior would appear and wipe them off. After overthinking of all of his decisions, JungWoo announces that they are about to close off an access road and insists that they should be staying if they do not feel like going with him, but he also states that he will not be able to protect them if anything happens to them in case the situation goes wrong, and they will be having their own choices on what to do. In the end, they all start to make their journey toward the access road altogether, as they didn't want to be left alone in the wild, but they are quite anxious as they do not have enough confidence to raise over their fear. But among all of them, Choi seems to be quite excited, as if she is about to get a new toy for her collection, which makes JungWoo wonder what she might be thinking. When Choi starts to question the monsters, JungWoo advises her to keep her composure, and as Mr. Joe and Choi end their bickering, JungWoo makes an announcement saying that they have arrived at their destination, and they are soon about to enter the Black Town filled with monsters. Mr. Joe is quite surprised to see that the place is quite dark despite the fact that it is still around 10 a.m., as he never expected the place to be like this. Choi then states that she thinks the fog isn't the most concerning thing, but the huge bodily monsters looking like some kind of plants, as if they need to spread their spores to survive just like ferns. She is concerned about the issue that it seems like they are trying to terraform the earth. Kim asks Choi if she is speaking from her experience after spending her time in the medical perspective, and she thinks that the spores are trying to invade their bodies and start growing from the inside. Kim starts to feel quite a stranger vibe as she made her remarking comments. Kim finds out that the barrier is fading constantly, and JungWoo claims that he is using less essence for the barrier because they are almost at the gateway, since the surrounding gateways are full of monsters. After hearing about the monsters, Yang starts to get frightened, which gets more pressure on Kim. JungWoo claims that he is the one who will be fighting anyway, so they can still turn back. It's not too late yet, but they will have to head on alone. He claims that all they need to do is follow him, as the protector barrier will be protecting them from most of the harm in coming toward them, but they still have to avoid coming too close to JungWoo because it is hard for him to distinguish the range of his attack. As he is about to head into the main zone, Kim starts to get shocked by the situation as the air gets too intense around him. Suddenly, Yang starts to feel he shiver from the aura around her, and it starts scratching on her to make her sweat, and at the same time, Kim is falling behind. Yang is then forced to call out for JungWoo to notice them. After checking Kim's pulse, she claims that the man is in shock, and it is about to get worse from now on, which weirds out JungWoo as they are almost at the gateway too. It seems that none of their phones are working, and Kim requests JungWoo to say something to him. JungWoo knows that they aren't going to be in grave danger in the barrier, but he also knows that he cannot reassure Kim in this situation while he still realizes that he is in fact the strongest savior. In this situation, no newbie awakened would have been able to do something as the resonators are still standing tall to put heavy control over them, which makes the average person lose their control quite easily. When Choi senses the shock in Yang's voice as well, she suggests that both of them are in shock, so they are barely about to hold on to it for 10 minutes more, but that time will not be sufficient for them to go back. So the only option stands is that they will have to deal with the gateway and then move forward. While Mr. Joe starts to think that it is not about reaching the gateway, as up there the main reason behind all this is standing tall. Yang starts to think that she will be able to do so knowing that she doesn't even have a choice in the whole situation. But while she is talking, she notices something behind JungWoo as it is now about to attack him. JungWoo then notices it as well, which just looks like some three-way monster spreading to smash them. As the creature looks like a leg smashed on the barrier, it starts to crack. And at that time, JungWoo realizes that the new type of monster is the farmer monster that the administrator was talking about at the beginning of the trip. The heavy smash attacks from the monster start to get more and more intense, and we see the monster slowly standing up from the ground. JungWoo notices the whole huge body of the monster, and it must not be any less than 20 feet tall, along with the body which is too dark to see any of the parts of its head clearly. But at the same time, JungWoo feels like the monster doesn't even have a head in the first place, and that doesn't mean that the monster cannot see anyhow, as it can clearly judge their location. The monster then starts to hit even more times, which gets the barrier crumbling as it constantly keeps on cracking at the same time, which makes JungWoo keep his composure, thinking that the monster spawning on the second day will not be able to reach the barrier. Still, the problem relating to the timing of its attacks is quite concerning, as he is wanting to use the barrier essence to reinforce himself to throw a bigger attack, but at that time he will have to sacrifice all of his comrades. As he has just created a group that he can rely on, he doesn't think that sacrificing will be a bad idea, as the monster starts to scream the same kind of wave that made them vomit in the helicopter. As they continue to get down on the ground like before, JungWoo doesn't seem to guess why they didn't get attacked while they were in the middle of the road. Mr. Joe shouts, calling JungWoo as he is having a hard time coping with the waveform, which leaves JungWoo an opportunity to throw an attack on the monster, since its attack will not be finishing them off almost instantly. After noticing the newfound opportunity, he uses his power of essence toward the enemy, which blasts the hell out of the monster, putting it down on the ground. JungWoo knew that it wasn't about to survive after digesting a hit coming out of the several essences, which leaves them in relief, but they still have to head in the direction of the gateway. The whole group then starts to stand up from the ground, but JungWoo notices that many of the janitors are now holding on to the resonators and will soon begin to attack them heavily while staying above their head. It seems that the monsters were looking for an opportunity to attack them while staying in the shadows, and it truly happens. And JungWoo has to use his power against them. But as he is about to attack once again, he notices that the janitors are munching on the farmer with their sharp teeth, proving the fact that the creatures have their self-made ecosystem representing the life of ants. JungWoo feels like he has found something important in this whole incident, and he then proceeds to blast away the whole sequence of monsters while advising them to hurry up before the other monsters are about to show up. Kim starts to get worse while trembling and soiling himself, which makes Choi remark on his situation as she thinks that he could have stayed behind them, as he is truly showing proof of his old age. Kim starts to get angry after hearing her words, which makes him try to stand up while cursing at her. But he fails to do so at the end of the session of trying, while Choi continues to shame him for his inability to stand up, which even annoys JungWoo as he wasn't expecting her to do something like that. Yang is now way worse, and Choi adds that her eyes are totally blank, and she might not even survive if they do not get to leave the place soon. But she is afraid to say the truth that Yang would better be left alone, not knowing how JungWoo will react to the situation as she doesn't really know him properly. Soon JungWoo reveals that he doesn't think that it will be wise for them to leave her alone and suggests Choi should take care of Kim as well, since they will be needing a pilot. JungWoo then realistically orders Choi to make him recover, as he will also be leaving her alone if he dies or something happens to him. Choi listens to JungWoo, and they soon then arrive close to the access road, which makes Mr. Joe question if he is truly about to reach all the way. JungWoo starts to keep himself optimistic while the gate starts to move as if something is about to unleash itself soon. JungWoo then prepares himself to attack, knowing that he will have to take Hanggun back at any cost, as he is prepared to take in whatever is about to come. Harsh rumbling begins in front of the access road, and JungWoo realizes that they have seen the same thing happening on the broadcast some hours ago. Then he notices that the road is sending more farmers on their trail to try to stop them from closing the access roads. But at the same time, JungWoo starts to feel something is a bit off from what he regularly sees, as the farmers are now holding in their arms, and after a while the farmers together start to crack only to transform into a resonator. He knows that the moment the resonator is formed completely, it will be attacking them head-on, and before that happens he will need to blast them away to protect the group. JungWoo fails to do anything on the resonators as they continue to stand tall, as if his attack didn't even scratch the surface of the monsters, as if they are quite invincible beings right now. He thinks of using the essence to close the gateway while needing to think if he has to exterminate all the monsters pouring out of the gateway first, which makes him think about his next step. More and more monsters continue to reveal themselves serially by making rumbling sounds, and the moment they reveal themselves properly, JungWoo uses his essence to blast them away while the others behind him continue to contemplate having a hard time holding on to their last hope. Mr. Joe realizes how incredible the attack is, reminiscing how just 2 days ago JungWoo used to be like a normal person like him. He couldn't believe that JungWoo would be some person using his skills to stop monsters from destroying their world. Then he really gets it, realizing that it is the way the legends are born in the world, as the people who died at his hands have no choice but to accept their fate, as their sacrifices are now helping him to overcome the human limits that were set up long ago. Mr. Joe knows that even though he might have been chosen just because he was strong, now he is nothing less than humanity's most important asset to survive, as he is the one who will stop the destruction of the Earth, a true savior. JungWoo then notices that no more monsters are coming out of the access road, and he realizes that it will be his only chance to restrict the access road, so he shoots up his power into the road, which then starts to work, as it looks like the gateway is absorbing all the essence coming right at it. Just like that, the count of 10,843 is now at 0, and the access road then eventually cracks on its own, shattering on the ground as if it didn't even exist in the first place. As the access road clears up, everyone including JungWoo keeps on looking right at the road, while JungWoo notices that all the fog and resonators have already started disappearing one by one. They then notice that the whole town of Hanggun has been reduced to nothing, and JungWoo realizes that it might be happening in a certain way. JungWoo and the group then get congratulated by the Earth Administrator for closing the gateway, and JungWoo starts to feel like it is his time to choose once again as he touches the light. He gets notified that there will be no longer any gateways opening in the area, and his arc activation function lets him know that he can now select 10 beings in total as his occupants. JungWoo realizes why there were specific conditions attached to designating an area as the personal holy ground, as even if one has boarded the Ark, the rest of all life on Earth can still be destroyed, as the awakened have nothing to speak for themselves. But if it is an area that has been designated as the holy ground, it becomes possible to deal with the risks as humans, as if JungWoo now could start building a new civilization there. He realizes that the Ark and the Holy Ground act as safeguards sent by those who wish to prevent the closure of the Earth. Then JungWoo asks for everyone to pay attention to him, as he is about to have everyone here board the Ark, and at that moment, Choi ends up asking him what an Ark truly is, as she doesn't know about it. When Choi elaborates on thinking that she only thought of Ark to be the helicopter, JungWoo realizes that he never had the chance to explain anything to Donghoon or Hyosun, as they only followed him all the way to the gateway to survive at that moment. Then JungWoo elaborates on how Ark is a system and how it protects them from the monsters spawning from gateways, but he doesn't know about it clearly since he has never used it before. He then explains he will be expanding the Ark, and as soon as he enters the system, bullet points start to appear above all their heads, and it seems that JungWoo will only be needing to take a glance at the person to make them enter the Ark. As soon as Mr. Joe gets selected as a passenger, the word human appears on his wrist, as the mark is supposed to indicate the race of the creature that is on it. But JungWoo remembers how he had chosen human as his savior's nickname in the first place, and he realizes that it was bound to be the nickname since the passengers are supposed to carry their savior's nickname for obvious reasons. Also, they will be having lines to represent their number as an Ark member, and it will be up to 30, which can be used as an indication of strength in many ways. JungWoo realizes that for the first time, he will be needing to hide his nickname just in case he doesn't start taking risks because of opening an Ark. He then explains how the symbol works to Mr. Joe, and he elaborates how he will be leaving 3 choices for them, as they can either go with him, stay in the terminated new location, or choose their death on their own accord, as he promises that it will be painless. When Choi asks JungWoo about using them as resources, JungWoo represents what he has learned while closing the first gateway, and promises that he will be respecting their personal decisions as they all came with him to the gateway, without presenting any kind of objection. Then Mr. Joe comes in front saying that he will be the one to join him first, and he reminds everyone of the fact that the power of JungWoo as a savior is remarkable, which makes their places safe as a passenger as he has learned about it in various events. Choi then agrees with his statement and Kim follows her after as he bows down to JungWoo, promising that he will be doing his very best as possible. In the end, Yang starts to stutter when it comes to making a choice, and they then prepare for their next step in this whole thing. When it comes to protecting the helicopter, JungWoo realizes that they do not have someone who could protect their vehicle, while Yang continues to stand alone in the deserted land, as she couldn't gather more strength to survive living like that. JungWoo let her have the pistol he had with him as a parting way gift, while JungWoo continues to wonder how their next area, Jongo, is about to be a lawless place, which makes it quite risky for them to leave the helicopter unattended, as it can be certain that someone will either go for stealing or breaking it, while it is quite loud at the same time as if they are announcing their arrival to the whole world. JungWoo thinks of testing something as he needs to confirm that he can protect the helicopter, and after thinking about it, he quickly jumps from the building while Kim continues to shout at him crazily. While JungWoo continues to fall down, Mr. Joe comes around asking Kim what has happened, and both of them continue to watch the scene unfold as they notice that JungWoo is truly okay, even after falling down from the roof. Then JungWoo continues to focus on jumping above the roof once again, knowing that he will have to be quick to make the helicopter safe, and after focusing on his powers for a while, he realizes that he is only able to reach 3 stories for now, which is his limit, while the others continue to wonder what JungWoo is trying to do. Miss Choi continues to think that JungWoo is quite impressive while she rummages through the idea of him not being able to jump up, as he cannot be omnipotent even if he is a savior in the first place. Mr. Joe then remarks on the idea of JungWoo recruiting a doctor since he already knows that he is not omnipotent, which continues to make Choi smirk devilishly for a while. Mr. Joe continues to wonder about her motives. He then starts charging Miss Choi for laughing at the whole situation as he thinks that she might be enjoying herself after everything that has happened, and she again mockingly apologizes to him for making him uncomfortable. Suddenly, JungWoo comes into the roof using the door and elaborates that he was experimenting with his skills, as he now knows that he can jump off the helicopter once they reach their destination in Jongo. The moment Kim hears the idea of him jumping off of the helicopter, he gets shocked, and JungWoo elaborates how he can only climb up to 3 stories only. JungWoo thinks that it will be the only way for them to keep the helicopter safe and asks Kim if it will be an issue for him to fly the plane above about 8 stories high. According to Kim, they will be fine as long as the winds aren't strong. JungWoo asks Kim if he still wants to bring his ex-wife to the Ark, and he notices Kim is now stumbling through his choices as he continues to stutter to give out an answer. After looking at him for a while, JungWoo states that it will be better for them to stop by Jongo at first, and there he will be able to make his decision as they will be handling the situation over there. As they continue to ride through the wind, they notice Yang standing in the middle of the deserted land, and they also notice that the people have seen how Hanggun has changed through time. Mr. Joe asks JungWoo his thoughts about Yang being fine alone, and to which JungWoo thinks that she is better off facing humans than a pack of wild animals. But there are always humans worse than wild animals, which starts to make him think for a while, knowing that the law has no meaning in the real world right now. Soon their helicopter continues to fly above the military bases, and the armed forces continue to talk to the walkie-talkie as soon as they notice the helicopter hovering above their heads. At that time, Kim asks JungWoo if he is familiar with what angels in the Bible supposedly look like, as unlike the winged humanoid figures they often think of. The Bible describes angels in a bizarre way, as the humans are always afraid to encounter them. When JungWoo doesn't understand a bit about his assumptions, JungWoo asks if he thinks that whatever is happening right now is because of God's will, and that the things coming in from the gateways are apostles who represent the will of God, while the humans are going against that divine will out of fear. Kim then elaborates, saying that he might be a Christian, but he doesn't believe that all those monsters were sent by God in the first place, and he claims that he was only wondering how the people will be thinking of them as they are about to come down with a helicopter, as if they are looking a bit like an angel. But moreover, JungWoo is fulfilling the role of savior, and at that time JungWoo claims that he is more like a monster who is only into destroying and killing everything in his path. JungWoo announces that he will be checking out the Itaewon Gateway as soon as they land, and he makes it clear that he will be wanting everyone to wait while he will be going alone to check out the gateway. When Mr. Joe worries about the armed forces, JungWoo suggests that he will be telling everyone that they have brought a savior who is affiliated with the government, as he will not be hurting the soldiers as they will be able to protect them in the meantime. He then also points out that there is a gun to help them in an emergency, but he suggests they should not be touching the rifles and ammo in the army base as they will be needing to bring them later soon enough. JungWoo bids his farewell to everyone after lighting himself up in essence as he prepares to leave. On the other hand, the whole group then starts to land on the ground where JungWoo jumped off, and Mr. Choi wonders how mesmerizing the abilities of JungWoo might be, as he is able to hunt humans with hardcore determination. While the old lady starts to blabber on her own, some armed military surrounds them demanding to know about their identities. Mr. Jo then starts to wonder that something might be out of place as they are speaking English, but he can still understand them as the essence translation ability talked about by JungWoo is working well. When Mr. Jo starts to speak, one of the men instructs others to get their guns down to assure Mr. Jo feels like he has nothing to be afraid of, as they are only interested to know about their identities to confirm their mission and reasons to be in the location they are in right now. The man then also points toward JungWoo's direction, claiming that they have noticed someone running off, and at that moment Mr. Jo decides to use the strategy suggested by JungWoo, as he wanted him to claim that they are from a special force helping the military to preserve the Yongsan military base. Then the man ends up asking about their unit, and to which Mr. Jo starts to get mumbled and jumbled as he wasn't expecting to hear something like that. As he continues to think of something, the leader of the military group starts to demand an answer while raising his gun to ask him who he really is. Meanwhile, JungWoo was rushing through the forest knowing that he needs to take care of Jonggo before it gets dark, but he isn't sure if it is possible or not. Suddenly he hears quite a commotion all of a sudden, and notices that the armed forces are fighting with a bunch of farmers and notices that they are doing a great job. But all of a sudden the game changes when the supersonic echo comes in and starts to make them vomit just like it happened to JungWoo and his whole group. JungWoo couldn't help but wonder why they are now lying down to counter farmers' sound attacks, but he also notices that it is possible for them to keep shooting even while vomiting. JungWoo thanks the military in his heart as he now has more of a feasible countermeasure against the farmers in under a few hours because of their trial and error, while he keeps looking at the mesmerizing sight of the farmers standing tall in the middle. In the next scene, we can see that the army squad is waiting for some savior who went ahead of them inside the deep fog, and they are quite concerned as it has been 5 minutes already. It seems that they are quite frustrated by the fact that they cannot see anything at all since the black fog is barricading them from being able to see anything. But they are grateful that the monsters have stopped coming outside though. Then when one of the men asks their captain if they can be trusting someone unknown like that, as he knows that the Korean government would have let them know regarding the matter of dispatching a savior. But since they didn't do such a thing, it is quite suspicious for him. Then the captain remembers how JungWoo requested them to take care of his team members while he started going inside the deep fog to see whatever that is happening. He is grateful that JungWoo arrived at the time when they needed him the most, no matter if the government truly sent him or not in the first place, as he was able to save them from dying. Since they cannot do much about the fog or the monsters, the captain suggests that they will be better off waiting for JungWoo to return, and at that time one of the guys rushes toward the captain claiming that he has found a group of suspicious people. The man then explains the situation to the captain and tells him about the suspicious man who is supposedly JungWoo, and when the captain gets to know about it, they are all released from being tied up. Kim is surprised by the fact that they aren't going to be interrogated, and Mr. Jo thinks that it is JungWoo who is the only reason that they are now able to walk freely. Soon the captain comes in claiming that there had been a misunderstanding on their end and reassures them all that they do not have to worry about them at all. Mr. Jo seems to be spacing out for some reason, and it seems that he is thinking about what can happen to someone if they are too close to JungWoo while the whole army has no clues about it at all. Mr. Jo is quite sure that the moment JungWoo returns, something shocking is about to happen, which he had been seeing countless times already. While he is deep inside his thoughts, Choi elbows him to remind him that he needs not to think about what is about to happen, and it seems that Kim agrees with her as well, even though he doesn't agree with her intentions most of the time. He knows that since the military cannot be beating all the monsters on their own, they will also be helpless if JungWoo decides to turn against them as well, since he is quite an invincible specimen in front of them. Also, there is a fact that continues to exist since the preservation of the civilization that will disappear when the gateway closes, still depending on the savior, as he is the one who will be holding the solution in his hands. While he is still in his thoughts, one of the men calls out to JungWoo coming out of the fog, as they are having a hard time believing that he is completely unharmed from the black fog that threatens human lives. When the people continue to ask JungWoo if all the monsters are dead, Mr. Jo notices that the dense fog is still resonating, meaning that the monsters and the gate still exist, which typically means that JungWoo wasn't able to close the Itaewon gateway. Miss Choi then suggests Mr. Jo go away slowly, and he then points it to Kim, and all of them slowly move away from the location by crossing the army group. Then soon, JungWoo comes walking over to the soldiers to finish them off, and before they are about to understand what is going on, JungWoo uses his power against them to blow them away. When the captain asks JungWoo his reasons, he lets him know that the value of essence has already been doubled to close the gateway, and it seems that JungWoo doesn't have anything to do about it. When all of the soldiers die without understanding anything, JungWoo suggests his crew take care of the rest of the soldiers as they will have to move on soon enough to Jonggo. JungWoo can be searching for the last of the soldiers as he plans of eradicating them from the whole area since he is in desperate need of essence, and he knows that the soldiers were mostly pure humans. After taking all their essences, he notices that he only has about 14,000 and he will still be needing a lot more than what he has now that it will be necessary to close the gateway. He remembers how the first one took him 10,000 essences, but just on the second day the whole number is now doubled as he continues to wonder if there is any kind of connection between the date and the number of essences required to close the gateway. He thinks that it is quite possible that he will be needing even millions of essences if he wants to continue doing it to save humanity. But one thing that still can help him is the pathfinder that keeps on pointing him toward Jonggo. As they aren't that far away, he knows that he will be able to take all the essence there soon enough by the end of the day, while preferring that he will be meeting top-ranked saviors in front of him there, so that he can collect all the essence in mass quantities all in one go, so he doesn't have to go around collecting them little by little. But there is a problem. He doesn't know if it is a good idea to kill every single ranked savior that he runs into, as despite the fact that he is the #1 savior, he cannot close the gateways for now, and there must be a time coming when closing gateways will be more preferable than collecting essence. He thinks that at that time it will get tough for him to continue closing the gateways all around the world since he cannot be in multiple places at once, that is for sure. He then asks the administrator what will happen when all the gateways are closed in the country, and it notifies him that once all of them are closed at once, the capable saviors will be having two choices. One of them is to remain in their own area or to be dispatched into a whole new area to explore and save. He then asks what would happen if the other countries weren't free from monstrous gateways, and the administrator claims that at that time, all creatures on the planet will become extinct slowly, day by day. JungWoo gets shocked to know that even after fighting his best to survive for 41 days, even if a single gateway is still open, the world will continue to crash on its own as if none of his hard work matters. Mr. Joe comes in to let JungWoo know that they should hurry up, and at that time more and more monsters then continue to rise, and a vast number of resonators continue to rise up on the ground after transforming into their full-blown version. JungWoo then advises Kim to get ready to take off, while Choi and Mr. Joe both are advised to grab important resources to load onto the helicopter, as he will be right behind them. While thinking about finding the soldiers' motives surprising, JungWoo goes on to fight against the group of monsters in front of him to ride on their helicopter once again. After riding up the helicopter, JungWoo notices the amount of ammunition they were able to gather, and realizes that despite the fact that they didn't have much time, they did quite well for the day. Then when the helicopter continues to head straight toward Jonggo, Kim notifies JungWoo and both of them notice the horde of birds as if they were looking like some sort of smoke in the air. JungWoo suggests that they should be taking a detour as far away from the flock while he continues to reminisce. It would have been beneficial for him if the birds have the sense of goodness like the cats did, as the lions he faced didn't care about good or bad at all. While avoiding the birds, they notice that all the buildings are destroyed as the whole area looks quite unwelcoming to everyone. At that time, JungWoo notices that far away, smoke is coming out from one of the buildings and decides to land closely. JungWoo then suggests everyone get together at the same time since everyone in the area might have heard the helicopter, and soon, they realize that there must be people in the building. Then as soon as JungWoo gets inside the building, a shocked woman asks him if he is looking forward to having a meal, and finds himself in a canteen-like place. It seems that they are in a place named Gold Castle, and Kim smells that people are cooking in the building, but Choi seems to have her own doubts about it as nobody would think of cooking at a time like this. Then at that time, Mr. Joe claims that DS Group was also active in the areas surrounding Gangnam Station, so it might be a similar situation with that restaurant. And JungWoo continues to wonder what is truly happening as he feels like the whole place is running normally as if nothing has happened. The chef then asks JungWoo if he is here to fight and warns him not to go around doing something like that since he doesn't look like a cop. The chef then advises JungWoo to run away, and JungWoo starts to feel surprised as he hasn't heard that sentence for a long time after the world turned upside down. He notices that the man isn't frightened even for a bit, despite the fact that he barely has any kind of essence on him. JungWoo notices the bruises on the woman and realizes that something must be quite off as he now feels like he is in some sort of martial arts novel. feeling like an outsider, as if the woman in front of him is some sort of plaything for the gangsters while the chef is the pacifist one. JungWoo goes on to ask the chef about the place, but he doesn't seem to answer anything to him since he isn't some cop of a soldier who can help in his cause. The moment JungWoo starts talking about the soldiers dying, the man's reaction starts to get worse as he hears that the soldiers have died. And at that time, some thug-like men start rushing into the restaurant asking JungWoo if he is the man who brought in the helicopter on the roof. JungWoo soon realizes that the whole group of people are awakeners, as they have a good number of essences in them, and the average number of essences they possess is around 700. The man in front asks JungWoo if he is a cop, and he ends up asking them if they would cooperate with the cops, which makes the supposed leader of the group claim that he would, as they couldn't live like that forever while having a predator sign on above his head. JungWoo realizes the whole theory behind what is happening as he realizes that the whole group of people inside the restaurant are now coexisting as a group, including the chef and the bruised woman with him. But he isn't that concerned about all that. At that time, one of the men in the room starts crawling to move away, only to get barricaded by the leader of the group, which makes him announce the reality behind JungWoo, as he is a dangerous individual. As the savior continues to cry on his own, asking for the leader to leave him alone, the leader gets cut down in half by JungWoo, while the wife of the man, the bruised woman, starts to get into a shock. The moment the group notices their leader dead, they rush into JungWoo to have him dead in front of them, and when the woman goes on to attack JungWoo, Kim rushes into her before she is about to stab JungWoo in the back and ends up finishing her off with the same butcher knife in her hand, as he is ready to do whatever it takes. When Kim finishes off the woman with the butcher knife in his hand, the chef lunges at Kim with his knife but gets obliterated by JungWoo as the dead body of the man drops down on the ground. As the dead bodies are now scattered around the ground, all the essences are scattered around the ground as well. And at that time, the supposed savior of the group gets questioned by JungWoo, as he is interested to know if more people like them exist in the area or not. When the man takes time to answer his question, JungWoo threatens him, which makes him talk as he informs him about the presence of the others. But he also tells him that people like these are usually good-natured. When JungWoo asks deeper about the situation, the man reveals that the area is pretty much safer compared to the other surrounding areas, as he remarks that the Blue House has been taken over by the criminals. When JungWoo hears about the situation, he is quite blanked out at the moment, as he wasn't ready to hear something like that, as the information gets verified by the man in front of him himself. The man then takes out his visiting card, which makes JungWoo realize that he is the senior reporter who was able to get away when the overrun happened in the first place, as he was working for the Baekdong Daily News, accredited to the Blue House in the morning. The man then starts begging JungWoo, claiming that he will be able to help him since he can see how many essences someone has. And JungWoo reveals his identity in front of the man, which makes the man wonder how high in the leaderboard JungWoo can be. Reporter Myungul realizes that JungWoo must be one of the top 5 ones, and while he continues to wonder, more of the people rush into the restaurant, which makes JungWoo question Myungul if anyone else is about to show up now. Myungul confirms that they are the ones who are now left, and before the men are about to make any sound, they get obliterated by JungWoo. After seeing the dangerous state of the situation, Myungul thinks that he will be able to change and cover the juiciest story in the world to make JungWoo understand that he will be better under his wing, as he will be able to spare important information for him. When JungWoo wasn't about to listen to any of Myungul's words, he realizes that he will have to play the last card in his hand and reveals that he can help JungWoo to meet the president, which starts to get everyone surprised as they weren't expecting that at all. When Miss Choi doesn't believe any of his words, Myungul opens up about what has happened as the houses were relocated for the president and the executive branch. But when it was about the reporters, criminals having awakened powers got inside to destroy all 200 bodyguards inside the premise as they ran out of bullets. All of the bodyguards faced their deaths as the leader of the criminal group slaughtered them with his blue thread-like power coming out of his fingers as if it was acting like a human meat grinder. JungWoo then gets out with Myungul only to see that a flock of pigeons is dead on the ground as if some kind of calamity has struck them somehow. Myungul claims that not just in their location, but the government lost all their public authority when the flocks of pigeons started attacking them at once. At that time, the thieves took advantage of the situation and started running rampant, and anyone who was able to survive both the pigeons and the thieves ended up forming vigilante unions like the one they had already seen at the restaurant. JungWoo realizes why the people inside were looking for the police to help them, but the whole theory of getting help doesn't feel viable to him, as all of them had a good amount of essence in their grasp. JungWoo asks Myungil what the government was doing to take countermeasures, as he knew that they were thinking of working along with the saviors to get their long-lost authority back in the work. Myungil then claims that the government wouldn't ever want to shoot at their general citizens, but by the time they had their grasp on the whole thing, it was already too late for them as they were left without any options in the end. JungWoo thinks about what the DS group's motives started to look like, as they have already thought about the whole thing as a war zone from the very beginning, and it felt normal to JungWoo as he knew nobody was taking control. Myungul starts to worry about the group they had left behind as they barely had any kind of essence, and JungWoo lets him know that they have already taken so many steps. It is possible as it is necessary since Kim needs his rest to recover from his hardened state, as they will have to move out as soon as he ends up gathering essence in the area. Soon they come in front of the Blue House. Myungul starts to direct him toward all the nearby locations as one of the roads heads toward Bugak Mountain. In that mountain, the second emergency response office was settled, the place where the president was evacuated to. When JungWoo starts feeling doubt, Myungul claims that everyone that has access to the Blue House certainly knows about the second emergency response office, as that is where everyone evacuates to when something big happens. And on the list, the president, secretaries, reporters, and even janitors get included. When Myungul brings up the topic of the criminal awakeners, JungWoo asks him about their number of essences, but it seems that Myungul doesn't have much memory of all of them. But all he can say that 2 of them had an incredible amount of essence in them for sure. He also mentions that they must have had around 6,000 essences, and JungWoo thinks that the 2 guys might have cleaned the whole Jonggo if they have that kind of amount on them. JungWoo notices that the gate was sliced perfectly, and it doesn't even look like they have used some knife, which can only mean that the men used the blue thread-like power Myungul was talking about, and JungWoo knows that there is only one person he knows that uses blue threads, and who is his father. JungWoo remembers that he even tried using his father's work, but it didn't work out for him, so he asks the administrator about it. The administrator claims that the way of using power depends on the person's characteristics, and realizes that he might one day face a person having an ability similar to his. JungWoo claims to Myungul that if he finds it necessary, he will work with the government, but he will be needing to check out something first, which is to know about what kind of strategy they have planned to implement once they have managed to recruit the rank 1 savior. Soon they come in front of the secretary building. According to Myungul, this is where everything began, as he happened to collect some essence while he was running away, as the man using blue threads made most of the damage here. Then, after following the footsteps one by one, they realize that all of the criminals are now holed inside the Blue House, and JungWoo decides to create a path. He then rushes into the group of enemies guarding the house to obliterate them, while overthinking about what to do if he comes in front of his father and gets shot in his hand for being distracted. When JungWoo gets a chance to breathe, he starts to wonder why he got shot in a moment like that, as in this situation. Even a small injury can become a big variable for him to comprehend, as he needs to be more rational and objective. JungWoo notices that his senses aren't affected by the bullet for some reason, but the bleeding is the most concerning thing for him. He then asks one of the criminals what he can do to stop the bleeding, and when the man starts to stutter before he's about to answer, JungWoo finishes him off, knowing that he isn't about to be of help to him. JungWoo checks out the man's body, but notices that he doesn't have anything on him, and he continues to hope that there must be a first aid kit inside the main building before he thinks of heading into the house. Soon a skinny-looking thug with a 6,000 essence on him comes around to JungWoo, which makes him comprehend as if he is the one using the blue threads to chop off everything around him. Then he realizes that it must not be him, since his essence manifests quite differently, as he isn't the same kind as his father. But at that time, a huge buffed man comes out having 6,741 essences at once, and JungWoo realizes that he is the man that can use the blue thread as his power. JungWoo doesn't seem to be much concerned about the men behind those two, as they barely have around 400 essences on them, but they are still important if he wants to think about gathering essence for the gateway. After calculating, he realizes that the maximum power that he is going to face is about 12000 essence, and even though he has the advantage now, he still needs to minimize any kind of variables. Then, when JungWoo starts to take in the essence at once, the buffed man calls out for his companion Sejong, as he thinks that JungWoo is way stronger than what they are thinking of him. But instead of listening to him, Sejong rushes into JungWoo while the buffed man continues to rethink his decision, as he reminisces his experience of taking in a good amount of essence, as he felt the overwhelming main throughout his body. When Sejong gets dropped down on the ground after being kicked off by JungWoo, the buffed man named Hyung using threads reveals his power in front of JungWoo, claiming that they can talk out the situation, as they can already sense that their situation is already off the road. JungWoo realizes that both of them are brothers, as Hyung used his powers to save his younger brother. Hyung kneels down on the ground asking JungWoo for his forgiveness, and JungWoo continues to ask about their identity and motives for obvious reasons. Hyung then starts to explain how they were arrested for theft and were being questioned at the police station as they were stealing from a jeweler, which starts to feel unbelievable for JungWoo, as they are just some petty thieves who were able to take over the Blue House. After telling the whole story about their retribution, JungWoo realizes that they must have some kind of ulterior movie behind them, And the moment he starts asking Hyung about their true intentions so he can make a decision, Sejong gets desperate and goes on to attack JungWoo at once with the intentions of finishing him off. JungWoo then grabs the throat of Sejong to strike him on the wall at once, and the moment JungWoo is about to strike the last attack on him, Hyung shouts out. But JungWoo doesn't listen to him as he obliterates his younger brother at once while deep blue essence keeps dropping on the ground. The moment Hyung notices that his brother is dead, he starts yelling with every strength in his body with the intention of finishing off JungWoo while he starts using his blue thread to slash off JungWoo. But unfortunately it doesn't work out for Hyung as the thread doesn't even cause a slash since the protective barrier around JungWoo is quite strong to begin with. While he was facing off with Hyung, Myeonggul comes in front of JungWoo and a far bigger fight commences between Hyung and JungWoo. Before JungWoo is about to understand Hyung's motives, he goes on to attack Myeonggul swiftly, as JungWoo realizes that Hyung was trying to finish Myeonggul from the beginning and not him. As the light starts to get too bright, JungWoo realizes that Hyung wanted to do it intentionally, and JungWoo knows that he won't be able to get any kind of information the government might have if Myeonggul ends up dying. Knowing that JungWoo needs to try his best to keep Myeonggul alive, he takes out his power with the intention of severing Hyung at once, while praying that it doesn't end up killing Myeonggul at the same time. When the power ends up hitting Hyung, it severs through him while tearing through the whole ground. Myeonggul is alright in the end, and Myeonggul is having a hard time believing that one shot was what JungWoo need to finish off someone like Hyung, who confidently took over the Blue House along with his fellow members. As JungWoo believes that he will never know why they came into the Blue House in the first place, he goes on to take in the essence Hyung dropped, and the moment he starts taking in the essence, he starts to feel immense pain as if his head is about to explode all of a sudden, while he cannot even more at all for a bit. While Myeonggul continues to ask if he is okay, JungWoo starts to recover by inhaling and exhaling to take in and take out the air. JungWoo starts to wonder how many essences he took in the first place as he starts feeling as if he was back in the sensitivity test, and he realizes that he needs to take care of the timing before taking in the essence, knowing that he will be dead if that happens during a fight. He notices that the pathfinder started directing him toward the west, meaning that he doesn't have any more enemies near Bugak Mountain or Jonggo, which also means that he doesn't have any kind of contender in the emergency response office where the president is residing right now. He then advises Myeonggul that they need to be there soon enough as it is time for Myeonggul to prove what he is worth. Soon both of them reach Bugak Mountain as Myeonggul continues to detect the ways to reach, which starts to feel amazing to JungWoo. But Myeonggul continues to act humble, claiming that he is only searching through by using braille on the signs as he knows that there are security systems used to confuse the general public, so they do not get to reach the Blue House in the first place. It seems that Myeonggul has also bandaged JungWoo, who seems to be alright for now. And while both of them are conversing, some kind of helicopter hovers above him, which most probably came from the National Assembly building. But according to Myeonggul, it must have been empty as it all started at 8 a.m. And at that time, no one in that building comes to work at that time, while the president didn't declare emergency martial law until it was in the afternoon. Myeonggul predicts that most of them must have died on the way to work, which makes JungWoo wonder who must have been inside the helicopter, and he thinks of finding it out by himself. Suddenly he starts to feel like he hasn't been hearing insect noises for a while, as it doesn't make sense to him that there isn't any kind of insects around him in the mountain. JungWoo then cuts through one of the trees and reveals the circuit and wirings inside, which makes him realize that they are in the military support zone. While JungWoo continues to wonder how he should control the situation, Myeonggul starts to overthink the plastic tree as a gun's pipe starts aiming at them at once. Soon countless soldiers surround them with their guns, as JungWoo starts to protect himself and Myeonggul with his protective barrier. When Myeonggul suggests that he should talk to them, JungWoo realizes that they might have a chance as they haven't shot them yet. One of the soldiers advises them not to move, claiming that they will only have one chance as he orders them to identify themselves. JungWoo notices that the personnel are broadcasting the whole interaction, and JungWoo uses the situation to name himself as the top-ranked savior, while naming his intention as he wants to meet the president. The whole footage is getting watched by the president, and he then starts questioning the man inside his room, who is someone named Kim. And it seems that he has already claimed that he is the person who the highest-ranking savior is. The soldiers let Myeonggul have a conversation with the presidential secretary, Mr. Kang, and the man on the phone starts asking about the situation to Myeonggil if he is acting as a hostage or something. Myeonggil dismisses the assumptions, and the secretary claims that the president has already seen everything. When JungWoo notices that Myeonggul is having a tough time communicating, JungWoo grabs the phone, realizing that the presidential secretary is someone who likes to waste too much time. So he starts cutting through the soldiers as if they are nothing but obstacles, and that gets noticed by everyone in the Blue House as they start getting terrified by him. When the scene unfolds, the president instructs his men to prepare prepare the VIP seat in the room, as Jung-woo will be joining them soon enough as he is ready to have a conversation with him. At the same time, Jung-woo and Myung-gil continue to get close to the emergency location where the president is located, while finishing off any kind of soldiers in front of them. And Myung-gil claims that it is his first time in this place. Myung-gil starts looking at Jung-woo, noticing that he has already doubled the number of the essence in such a short amount of time, and wonders if he is doing a good thing by bringing him to the president or not. At the same time, he is excited to witness how far he can truly go, and all of a sudden the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs Young Kim introduces himself to Jung-woo to apologize to him for wasting his time. The man then claims that the emergency meeting will soon begin and the president will be attending as well, so he advises Jung-woo and Myung-gil to follow him. As they enter, Jung-woo notices countless fearless bodyguards, and they get into a room where almost 1,000 people can be seen, and all of them are high-positioned government workers and their relatives. Jung Kim then also lets Jung-woo know that the person claiming to be the highest positioned savior is also present. And Jung-woo notices the guy has only 2,663 essences on him, while he has 41,643 essences on him. The next scene unfolds the concept of ants inside a human's head, as the ants are known to have a society existing within an iron fortress built by their own rules, with all the ants working hard every single day. At the same time, to the ants, humans are quite an undefeated force that cannot be stopped no matter how hard they try, as they see them as the monsters of their society. It seems that the monologue is about the man who is claiming himself to be the strongest savior in the affiliated region, as he reminisces about how he got in touch with the government in the first place. He reminisces how the government has proposed such an exquisite offer by the government, and the fact that he didn't think about taking all the advantages even for once. Now as Jung-woo stands in front of him, he is having a hard time believing that he is now standing in front of the strongest and highest-ranking savior, which he is having a tough time digesting. As soon as Jung-woo makes his entrance, the president himself greets Jung-woo, and after noticing the whole incident, the guy realizes that he is back in the role of the ant once again, as Jung-woo stands in front of him, which starts to make him tremble uncontrollably. As the meeting is about to begin, the president takes a moment to thank Jung-woo for joining the meeting as an honored guest, and he then directs everyone's attention to the screen where the current situation in Seoul can be noticed, as the zones are marked in various colors to sense the immense danger dwelling inside the area. As soon as the audience hears that most of the zones have no public order, they start shivering, wondering how there can be so many unconfirmed areas, as they now don't even know what is going on outside of Seoul at all. They then soon start wondering what will happen, not knowing how long they will have to stay inside of the confined zone, as they begin discussing their armed forces and military. While the president continues to spare the truth for the audience, Myung-gil asks Jung-woo if it is okay for the president to share all this information with the people, as he is worried that it will just cause more chaos and confusion for everyone. Jung Kim states that the government is all alone in this whole thing, as the National Assembly is now gone and they can no longer communicate through diplomatic channels. The burden is too great for the government to bear on its own, as they will now be needing outside help to examine the situation and approve the next course of action. The president then announces that according to the rules of the government, the outlaws who have been taking advantage of the chaos and committing murders can no longer be regarded as citizens, and while searching for a solution to take their city back from them, DS Group has reached them with an offer claiming that they have many awakened agents who can help them to regain their strength. As soon as the proposition is revealed, Jung-woo starts to overthink what the DS Group is about to do, while the whole room starts to murmur about the ideas, claiming that the DS Group's proposition sounds reliable enough for them, while the others protest their proposition, knowing how a corporation shouldn't be meddling in with government businesses. Jung-woo continues to enjoy his tea instead of talking about DS Group's proposition, and he realizes that there is no reason the government should be rejecting the idea, while for DS Group it is quite a good time to spread their power all over the country, as they might have a long-term plan. But Jung-woo realizes that none of them can hold a claim in the dangerous situation, as the whole world is about to be destroyed in 40 days, and Young Kim brings in the documentations Jung-woo asked him about. After reading through the report made by the man, Jung-woo realizes that the man has the best understanding of the situation that is going on right now, as he predicted the destruction of the government and the rise of a new power and an entirely collapsed infrastructure. When Myung-gil hands Jung-woo a ballot to decide what should be decided in the emergency meeting, Jung-woo asks Jung Kim who would he like in this whole arena to survive in the end, and Kim instantly realizes what Jung-woo is thinking about. He then instantly proposes that Jung-woo should think of the most useful two people in this whole scenario, and suggests that he needs to think of an auction before he makes his judgment for the two people that are going to be left in the end. The word auction starts to make Jung-woo feel surprised, as he couldn't think of doing something like that with that many people inside the room, And Jung-sung Kim thinks that it would be better to do something like that instead of forcing someone out. And at the same time, he thinks that the audience will be more eager to make a decision, and Jung-woo might find unexpected bid that he could benefit from. Then Jung-woo asks the man who he thinks is the most important one in the room, and Jung-sung claims that he isn't sure as it would depend on how far gone the country will be, which to Jung-woo feels like he is asking him to be more specific in that case. Then when Jung-woo provides his answers, Jung-sung is shocked to hear that the population can even drop to less than 200. And in that case, he suggests that they will be needing rice and starts glancing everywhere to think of something as he dashes into the distance to look for something. Myungul then realizes that Jung-woo is thinking of taking Jung-sung with him, and Jung-woo claims that it will only happen if he is satisfied with his answers. Jung-sung then starts taking someone with him, and he brings Savior Park to Jung-woo, as he is the director of the Office of Agriculture, instigating that he will be the most important person in the whole room. Jung-woo then starts asking the man some questions to judge his capabilities, and after hearing out his answers, Jung-woo realizes that the man must be someone with hands-on experience, and he will be valuable enough to bring in according to Jung-seong's opinion. At that moment, Jung-seong then begs Jung-woo to spare the man as he will be taking care of the food crisis and establishing a long-term plan. Then when Jung-woo makes up his mind, he instructs them to get behind them as he is about to get started, and soon the huge massacre begins in an instant as people start to notice the chaos happening behind them. With each strike made by Jung-woo, people continue to die off as flies while they continue to run to save themselves. At that time, the guy selected by Jung-seong starts to react, and Jung-seong tries his best to keep him calm so he doesn't do something that will anger Jung-woo. When the bullet starts raining on Jung-woo, and Jung-woo starts protecting them from all the bullets as the bodyguards start to rush in. While taking care of the bullets, Jung-woo notices that the president has already been evacuated, and he realizes that he better hurry if he wants to take care of things before DS Group gets in here within an hour, as the government was thinking of working with them. He starts to slash down all the bodyguards, and one of them gets out a grenade only to throw it at Jung-woo and his men. Realizing that he has no choice anymore, he thinks of using his body to block the grenade, knowing that he can take care of the guards later. As the grenade blasts away, Jung-woo gets thrown to the ground, and all of the bodyguards seem to be obliterated in front of him as the countless essence continue to appear in front of him. Jung-woo realizes that it is the first time things came this close to him, which makes him realize that having 40000 essences isn't worth much in real time. He then starts to feel like to protect the Ark passengers and be prepared for all variables. He will be needing more and more essence. He then advises his men to find a decent place to hide while he will be taking care of the rest on his own, as it is much easier to fight alone. He then starts walking into the corridor and starts thinking if everyone has escaped already or not. But at that time, he then notices some dirt out of a door, which makes him realize where they have been hiding all this time. We can see that the president is quite raging, knowing that he is about to die, and the whole scene feels too funny for the guy who claimed to be the highest ranked savior in the first place, only to enjoy the extra facilities given by the government. When the personal security guard of the president gets out his gun to point at the sleazebag, the guy starts to lose his mind, realizing that even the normal humans are now looking down at him. In a rage, the guy insists the man should start shooting to see who is the person that is about to survive right now. And at that moment, the president orders his guard to stop as their real enemy is outside looking for them, and arguing will not be solving anything for them. It seems that the DS Group will be arriving in 18 minutes, and the president thinks that there is still hope for them. The president starts to calculate how much time Jung-woo will take to reach them, as they still have their agents scattered around the whole place. The president then commands the commissioner to gather as many agents as he can and try to buy them some time, while he commands the director to check on their evacuation route to ensure that they can meet with DS as they arrive. Then he looks at the fake highest-ranked survivor named Dong-hwae to inform him that he is now being appointed as Korea's official savior, which makes him gasp as he didn't know that something like that could happen once in a while. The president then remarks that the whole government of Korea will be supporting him instead of Jung-woo. But when Dong-hwae looks around, he only notices 3 of them around the room. As the director was about to leave, he gets sliced off by Jung-woo. The president and Dong-hwae continues to look at him in shock while Dong-hwae starts to get prepared to face Jung-woo. The president starts acting jumbled in fear and starts asking Jung-woo what he truly wants. And Dong-hwae notices that Jung-woo is constantly mumbling, which makes him realize that he must be communicating with the evaluator right now. It seems that Jung-woo is concerned as he is now the second-ranked savior in the area, and the evaluator didn't make any kind of mistake, which starts to make him wonder how much essence the current savior can have right now. Knowing that he will be losing the leader privilege in the morning, he starts gritting in anger as he prepares himself to mow down the men in front of him, including the president. Meanwhile, Myungul and the others start to discuss what they should be doing and discuss Jung-woo at the same time. It seems that Taehui is having a hard time coping that they will have to help Taehui slaughter innocent people, but Jung-seong seems to have a positive opinion about him, as Jung-woo continues to spare people at the same time. As they continue to discuss their future, Jung-woo enters the room announcing that everyone is now dead, and claims that he has already noticed a food storeroom back in the hallway, so he advises everyone to grab whatever they can to meet him at the elevator as he will be meeting the DS group in advance. Jung-seong realizes that the whole scenario is about to be like two titans clashing with each other with their completely different views, and he also knows that the DS group will not try to either recruit Jung-woo or eliminate him. Even though he knows that DS group can take someone important to him as hostage, he wonders if Jung-woo has someone like that or not, while we can see Jung-woo's father chilling on the bench. Min-gu seems to be frustrated after finishing up all his cigarettes, and he starts to wonder how he is about to survive in this world without booze and cigarettes. As he is near Sangdo Station, he knows that Yongsan is across the Han River Bridge. And to the west there is Boramai and Sindebang or even Incheon, while Noryungjin is to the north. He starts to wonder where he will be finding cigarettes as the east looks quite worse compared to the others, and at that time he continues to contemplate his son and their life. He notices some guys surrounding a tiger as if they are considering the tiger to be some cat, which reminds him that the world is truly screwed right now. When he is about to move away from the place, realizing that getting in the middle will only continue to get him in trouble, he hears some kind of voice inside his mind and realizes that it is the tiger that is calling out to him, even though it sounds quite dramatic in the first place. Then the guys around the tiger notice Min-gu behind them only to ask him about his intentions, wondering if he was trying to sneak up on them all this time. Realizing that he doesn't have a way around the situation, Min-gu takes out his blue thread to finish them off, knowing that needs to be done as it seems that he is now wielding a total of 5,320 essences on him. On the other hand, the men that came from the DS group continue to wait for the government officers, and at the same time they feel it is quite useless that their company is communicating with the government despite the fact that they are nothing right now. While they continue to contemplate what to do, Jung-woo starts coming out with his weapon at hand, and as soon as he notices them, he rushes toward them with all his might only to strike countless agents in front of him at once. Jung-woo counts that the men have a total of 40,000 essences, and the guys then start to recognize Jung-woo as he once destroyed their office in Gangnam as well. Jung-woo then starts mocking them all as they are quite weak compared to him, but at the same time he continues to shame them as they are now trying to get Gangnam on their guard. Then in another place, Min-gu finishes off all the guys that surrounded the tiger, and as soon as he takes in the essence of those men, he starts to have a headache, and when the tiger notifies him about his strength, Min-gu realizes that the tiger can look at the number of his essence. When Min-gu goes on to look at the tiger as it was wounded, the tiger goes on to attack him as well, and at that time Min-gu notices that the tiger was protecting its tamer all this time, and the tamer is a girl who is wounded and bloodied sitting in the back unconscious. The next scene unfolds with Jung-woo mowing down the whole DS group at once as only the essence continues to drop down on the ground. And Jung-woo reminisces about the fact that the supposed leader of the agents was claiming that none of their reinforcements are alive right now, which typically means that the bloodbath is finally over. When he finishes his kill streak on the DS group agent, Jung-woo is left with 90,000 essences in total. But even after almost doubling his amount of essence, he is still at the bottom of the second place for some reason, which is the most surprising event for Jung-woo. He continues to wonder how much farther ahead the guy in the first place must be, as he may either be 1 point ahead of him or thousands, which he cannot be sure of. But at the same time, he thinks that he can also get down in the third place anytime soon if it continues to happen, and that will be taking out his place to close. Soon Junsong comes up to him after finishing up packing all the stuff they needed for them along with all the food and weapons. Jung-woo advises Jungseong to only carry a minimal amount of food along with stun grenades and a lot of medical supplies and some extra necessary things with him. On the other hand, Choi and Mr. Jo were taking care of all the intruders with their guns and armor, and the predator sign of Mr. Jo was working well as they continued to get frightened by him. Then at that time, Kim ends up claiming that he doesn't think that Mr. Jo is suited as a predator at all, which surprises him the most, as he wasn't supposed to be one in the first place. Then Mr. Jo remembers that since he has answered replying that he would kill his boss in the questionnaire, it might have reflected something about naming him as a predator or something. He also adds how his boss used to be mean to him for no reason at all, and the moment he truly got the chance to finish him off, he lost the desire to do so as if it didn't even exist in the first place. Miss Choi claims that it makes sense to her, and at that time Jung-woo gets a call from Jung-woo who advises them to grab their stuff to come to their location, and Kim asks for the location Jung-woo to designate it. Soon the whole group arrives and Jungsong feels distorted after seeing a DS group helicopter and asks if the pilot is also from the DS group or not. JungWoo remarks that Kim used to belong to them, and Taehui starts to wonder how insane it starts to sound, as JungWoo is the one who had been slaughtering all Kim's DS group colleagues. When Kim exits the helicopter, JungWoo advises him to take a break as they will start loading the helicopter, and Mr. Jo starts asking JungWoo what he had done with the government employees. After that, JungWoo starts introducing everyone to the new members, and when they notice the anxious state of Taehui, all of them fear for their lives, knowing that getting on JungWoo's nerves will only get him in danger. Then JungWoo starts to rush all his power at once to show Taehui who the boss really is in this whole plot, and he starts to shake in fear. JungWoo announces that they will be heading in the direction of Itaewon, and after leaving the introductory part to an end, they start heading toward Itaewon as they continue to look at a bunch of resonators. JungWoo reminisces how the Earth's ecosystem matches with the otherworldly beings that they are seeing right now, and makes up his mind that they will have to put an end to the whole massacre soon enough. Suddenly, JungWoo takes his leave from the helicopter, advising that they should take shots if others continue to approach them while he is away. While Jungsong and Taehui think that JungWoo might be quitting living soon enough after dropping, JungWoo keeps on rushing toward his target as if nothing has happened to him. When Jungsong notices the true strength of JungWoo, he is astonished to witness how powerful the top-ranked survivor can be, and wonders if every country has people like that or not, as they are about to be humanity's only hope to hold on right now. Then when JungWoo moves on off to the distance, Jungsong asks what will happen if the black fog reaches them, and Miss Choi directly answers him by saying that they will die for sure, as staying there is their safest option since going with him isn't a viable option. When Jungseong finishes talking with Miss Choi, he realizes that she has absolute faith in JungWoo, which is probably based on her personal experience, as JungWoo himself is well aware of his own capabilities and knows how to use them properly. Suddenly, a shocking sound astonishes them all, and it seems that JungWoo is terminating one of the gates. Jungseong notices that all of the buildings have vanished, which as well is then explained by Mr. Jo. Jungsong is quite surprised that Mr. Jo is quite calm even after witnessing something like that, which probably means he has already experienced the whole thing before. Or there may be some connection between the both of them, as Mr. Jo gives off the same vibe as JungWoo sometimes. Then when the helicopter reaches JungWoo, they get started once again, and JungWoo puts the 3 new members in the Ark, as they can also be protected by the monsters right now while helping their survival. When JungWoo explains the situation regarding the seats and everything in the Ark, Jungseong realizes what JungWoo was truly saying from the beginning about the population dropping to less than 200 someday, since the maximum number of seats on the Ark if he closes 20 gateways is 200. When Jungseong claims there may be more saviors, and JungWoo remarks that it will only happen if the saviors do not fight with each other, since the saviors have to remain in the top 5 rankings to keep their power to close, while still gathering essence for their own survival, including everyone in the Ark. After hearing out JungWoo, Jungseong realizes how useless the topic of surviving together sounds, as the savior's survival is directly linked to the survival of the people on board the Ark. And above all that, they also have to consider what is about to happen in 41 days, which is still unpredictable. When Jungseong thinks about the whole plot thoroughly, he realizes how the savior has to act in order to save the world. And even though he agreed to come with JungWoo since he wanted to live, but now, he is 100% certain that JungWoo is going to save them all, as he is certain that they aren't about to find a more responsible madman anywhere else in the world. Soon, the lines start to appear on the 3 of them while they continue to feel immense pain for a while, and at that time JungWoo senses something is wrong, as, despite the fact that there are only 6 of them, it shows 7 for some reason. At that time he realizes that Hyosun still must be alive, and he has no idea how she has managed to survive all this time. Knowing that he cannot fill all the seats by taking people in as there is only a limited space in the helicopter, he thinks of reaching first place again by the next day so he can use the holy ground. When he tells everyone that he isn't the top-ranked savior anymore, people continue to comment among each other on what to do and what will be their next step. As everyone is having a continuous discussion on what to do, Miss Choi brings up the topic of reproduction, as it may be a crucial plot in the survival of humanity soon enough. Then when Taehui gets annoyed by her proposition, Jungseong calms him down, while Kim feels that Miss Choi is also reacting harshly despite looking at the bigger picture. When they end up the debate about reproduction or raising someone else's child, JungWoo claims that he doesn't really care about that whole thing at all. JungWoo claims that he doesn't care if the future kids are his or not, as it doesn't matter much to him in the first place since he doesn't think about what will happen after he dies. After coming all this time, JungWoo doesn't think he has any great love for humanity, as he has killed up to several hundred people or more. It would be ridiculous for him to feel sad about it right now. JungWoo then announces the reason for him to assemble the group, as he is about to leave all the humane decisions for them to take, since they can take a wiser decision for him whenever they need to. He then instructs them to leave him out of the vote and keep it to themselves, which doesn't feel right to Taehui. and JungWoo makes him remember how the government was trying to decide all the important matters with just 1,000 people so they can do that as well. After hearing that, Jung-sung asks all of them to know how they are about to prepare for the next generation, and Miss Choi claims that she will need to hear something more specific, as if they want to include couples or children in the arc. Jung-seong then states that they will vote on a quota system for the next generation, and the majority of the votes will be de-icing what is about to happen in the future, which means that they will need 4 votes to be accepted. Jung-woo realizes that Jung-seong is already adjusting to his new position quite well as he is becoming the group's advisor, and with his direction, the voting of including couples or children then starts. Meanwhile, Min-gu suffers from making a bad decision to help, as he is now having to carry the wounded man along with the tiger beside him. Then at the same time, he is almost sure that the man who tamed the tiger is already dead, as the body will start to rot soon enough. He thinks that he needs to find ways to dispose of the body before the rotting starts, but he still needs to make a decision about the tiger as he knows that it will not like it. Knowing that the tiger will start throwing a fit, Min-gu starts looking for ways to do something, and at that moment he notices an air conditioner, meaning that someone might be inside the building. He then starts getting inside the building as it might be a big enough place for all of them, and the moment he goes on to stand for a while, a woman comes out of nowhere to attack him with her scissor, which terrifies him badly. Then when the tiger is about to attack the woman, Min-gu protects the woman with his force field, but that gets shattered by the tiger in an instant, and Min-gu calms the tiger by threatening him to say that he still has his tamer. On the other hand, the voting decides that in addition to technical experts required for humanity's survival, they will start including couples and children on the ark from now on, and Myungul claims that 20% of the seats will be fine for the next generation. While they continue to bargain about the whole thing, Jung-woo realizes that it is about to take a long time, and he notices that the pathfinder is pointing toward the west, since all this planning will be wasted if he doesn't get to become the top savior once again by the next day morning. Then when Jung-woo hurries up, it is decided that 30% of the seats will be for the quota system, and they will be fixed for pregnant women and their spouses along with children under the age of 10. As the decision is already made, Jung-woo asks Kim about his ex-wife, and it seems that he still wants to save her, and he claims that she is in Sinsu, where they all head on to. Meanwhile, in the DS Group Special Soul headquarters, people are looking for information about Jung-woo, knowing that they will need to find his weakness to deal with him, and they all come to the conclusion that looking for his father will be a good direction to take. The group arrives in Sinsu, and Jung-woo soon witnesses the group of animals heading in some direction, as there are at least thousands of them at once. After seeing that, Jung-woo gives Kim and the others 30 minutes to get back, as he will be dealing with the dogs, and he jumps on the ground instantly to finish off as many of them as possible. Kim then soon reaches out to his ex-wife in her own house and notices that she is pregnant, which weirds Jung-seong, as he wasn't expecting to experience something like that at all. And he is also sure that the baby isn't Kim's for sure. Seon-hwa's husband comes in front of him to introduce himself to Kim, as he has heard a lot about him from her. When the introduction finishes, Kim starts laying down the harsh truth by saying that nobody is coming to save them, and shows the work of Jung-woo to both of them, knowing that the visual representation works better. While every animal is working against Jung-woo, he stands in the middle to crush them all, and he realizes quickly that the dogs have a pretty serious grudge against all the humans, while looking just as brave as the cats in Hangun. As soon as Seon-hwa's eyes meet Jung-woo's work, she is already reacting badly, but Kim continues his best to make her understand that they will not be surviving alone without Jung-woo. At that moment, Jung-seong reminds him that they only have 20 minutes on their hands, and Kim starts reacting badly as he begins haggling with Seon-hwa after grabbing her hand. Witnessing that, her husband then crashes Kim on the wall, which ends up making Kim hit his head, but he still continues to mumble that they need to bring Seon-hwa with them. After seeing the whole scene unfold, Jung-seong starts acting rashly to tell them that they have no idea about what is going on, and Kim only came into their home to give them a chance to live, and how they are repaying him isn't that fair. When Seon-hwa's husband starts to fear the situation, Jung-seong claims that they need to pick Kim up, knowing that he will die soon enough if he keeps on losing blood, since he is the most valuable man than everyone else, as Jung-seong already knows the wrath of Jung-woo. Meanwhile, Min-gu and the woman are still struggling to maintain their balance with the tiger and its tamer. From that woman, Min-gu gets to know about the cult that took all the doctors in the area, and it seems that they are all holding up inside the community service center. It seems that not only the doctors, but also every useful people are taken into the premise, and she adds that the cult also finished off her son who used to be a police officer. Then the woman starts requesting Mingu if she can go along with him, as she knows the area well, knowing that the cult will be willing to fight while hoping that Mingu can help her take an act of revenge on them. Mingu agrees and gets introduced to the woman, and it seems that the woman is named Jong Yi-han. Suddenly the tiger starts sniffing around its tamer and starts roaring in anger, claiming that his tamer is no more, which makes the woman try to calm down the tiger in the most suitable way possible. Meanwhile, when Jong-woo's number of essence reaches up to 100,213, it seems that the leaderboard has set him up as the top-ranked savior once again. The whole scenario makes Jong-woo realize that the top-ranked might have had 100,000 essences as well. At the same time, Jong-woo starts fearing up that the person who once became top-ranked will try to cross him once again, as there is not much difference between them. He realizes that he needs to create a big gap between them, and starts thinking about where he might find a good amount of essence to make that happen. Then he remembers that the Pathfinder is still making him look at the west ever since he went to the Blue House. He wonders what might be in the west, as he remembers multiple choices to make in the west. Knowing that there's not much time to waste, he starts heading as he knows he has to uncover what there might be. Then as soon as he enters the building, he notices the blood that dripped on the floor. And the moment he meets eyes with his men, he asks them about Kim and the couple. Then Mr. Joe announces to him that Kim is unwell and the others are looking after him. Then when he asks if he said anything before losing his consciousness, Kim's ex's husband makes it clear that he wanted them to tag along with them, and it is the truth. But Jong-woo is concerned that he will quickly fall behind if he cannot travel right away, as he doesn't have a helicopter pilot to take him to the gateway, and realizing that these two have messed up his path, he thinks of blasting them away. But the quota system has been already implemented to put an end to that. After judging that he will have to stick to his plans, Jong-woo announces that he will be going away himself, which makes Tae-wee gasp in fear. But Jong-woo insists they stay without him, as the helicopter won't be seen in the dark, while the people belonging inside the apartment complex will not be bothering them for him, while he will have to work for climbing the ladder once again. As Mr. Joe has confidence in Jong-woo, he starts moving in his desired direction, the north. But as he is about to move deeper, the Pathfinder continues to direct somewhere else, which makes him remember what the evaluator said about the Pathfinder. Knowing that if he is following a single person and the person can go away knowing that he is a savior, Jong-woo prepares himself while questioning the evaluator to curb his curiosity. Soon he comes in front of a building in some barbecue restaurant, and as he gets near he smells a faint smell of barbecue happening inside, which makes him think how insane the person inside might be. As soon as Jong-woo enters the room, he sees a man trembling in fear while trying to take a bite, and someone from behind was about to attack Jong-woo, as it makes him blast away the whole doorway knowing that he has to win the fight. The unbearable power hits Jong-woo, and it can be believed that Jong-woo wasn't expecting the person to be this powerful at all, since he has never met someone like him who would bait others by trapping someone in a restaurant. Then when the blast calms down, Jong-woo starts to wonder where the culprit might be, and at that moment, he notices that a sword-like essence hit is coming right toward him from above, and the moment it hits him, it shatters pretty quickly. Jong-woo cannot comprehend why the attack was so weak all of a sudden, and then when someone rushes into him, Jong-woo realizes that the opponent was just trying to distract him with that spear hit. The enemy then goes on to use his power like small ball sizes, and Jong-woo instantly realizes that the man is obviously a better fighter than him, since he has already guessed that direct attacks will not be working on him. Soon the enemy bashes into Jong-woo thinking that he will be done, but he was wrong, and the man finally realizes that he is messing with someone who is way more powerful than him. After all this time, Jong-woo notices that the person was fighting with only 50,000 essences, and he is confirmed that if the opponent had the same amount of essence on him, he would have been dead already. Soon the enemy starts dashing, knowing that he has to protect himself, but Jong-woo starts chasing him down, knowing that he will only be missing out on a huge number of essences that will cost him his place as the top-ranked savior once again. This whole time Jong-woo was thinking that his opponent is running away, but it seems that he is about to get punched in the face once again. But no, Jong-woo flips his game on the enemy as he slashes away one of his hands only to ask him some questions, as he claims that he will be making his death a lot painless. Meanwhile, Kim is still lying down, blood pouring out of his head, but he is slowly recovering already and even regained his senses for the first time. Mr. Joe thinks that they were lucky to find Miss Choi, as she is proving her value right now, which is able to change her evaluation toward everyone in the end. As Kim starts to talk about his ex-wife, Jong-woo comes in asking for his well-being, and Kim apologizes to him for causing so much trouble. Then Jong-woo starts talking about the couple as they have to make a decision and asks Kim what they should be doing. When Kim claims that it is fine, Jong-woo asks the couple if they are good with following the rules, and the man claims that they will be fine with that, which allows Jong-woo to put them on the ark, which instantly shows the mark on both of them. And since this is the first time for them to see such a thing, both of them are nervous. When JungWoo looks into the Ark system, he realizes that unborn babies do not get counted as a passenger and predicts that living creatures may need essence in order to board the Ark, which makes him wonder what will happen once the baby is born. As he worries about the concept of the essence and the babies, the whole thing only gets cleared in front of JungWoo, as he now knows that the babies will be safe. Miss Choi comes in saying that they should be monitoring for another 30 minutes to get him better just to make sure that their play doesn't get flipped on them. JungWoo claims that they are about to go to Gwangmyeong as they are about to spend the night in the Seoul Southern Detention Center. On the other hand, the tiger can be seen praying, and Min-gu asks the woman if she truly wants to travel with him, as she is about to see a lot of awful things. But she says that she will be fine since she is a parent since she lost her son to those bastards. At that moment, the tiger claims that it will be going with them as well, and suddenly, Min-gu hears the sound of a helicopter, which makes him wonder why they would use something like that, which continues to draw attention. But even after thinking about their confidence, Min-gu doesn't sense something as he can see that it is only a medical helicopter, which shouldn't even have weapons. Then soon the whole group of JungWoo exits from the helicopter, and Mr. Jo is surprised to see that nobody is chasing them down despite the fact that the helicopter made a lot of noise. JungWoo advises Myung-gil to take care of everyone and find a safe place to stay while he decides to run out to check out the downtown area, as he notices that the Pathfinder is working up to let him know that there are a lot of awakened around him. As JungWoo rushes into the wild, Tai-wai and Jung-seong start planning for a safe place where they will be able to stay, as the place have to be somewhere around a gateway. Tai-wai starts arguing with Jung-seong when he starts feeling like he doesn't care about farmland at all. But in this whole incident, Jung-seong was thinking the better for everyone and suggests Namyeongju, which is twice as close as Yangpyeong, and there will be a railroad nearby while having a lot of farmlands as well. Soon JungWoo arrives and Myung-gil notices that his essence count has reached 281,260, which isn't that impressive to JungWoo. Jung-seong suggests JungWoo to take a look at their suggested areas close to gateways, and it seems that they are planning to select Ikyeon next, which is followed by Busan at the same time. There is the DS Group's headquarters in Busan, which will leave them with a good amount of infrastructure. JungWoo realizes that they will have to hurry up to make a permanent solution since there is no more room inside the helicopter for anyone else, which makes JungWoo suggest that they will be heading to Namyeongju the next day. At night, the Earth greets them with a banging sound to announce that the third day has begun, and it announces that there will be a 30% increase in the opening of gateways, which is later selected by JungWoo, and JungWoo feels good to see that he is in the first place once again. JungWoo thinks of using Advent against the person in second place as it is about time. He secures his first place position, but he chooses Holy Ground thinking that he can be using Advent the next day. And when the changes appear, JungWoo notices that the agent marking can be seen above Mr. Jo's head. As soon as the agent symbol appears above Mr. Jo's head, everyone starts to get an awkward feeling, but it seems that Mr. Jo has been re-evaluated and the system has assigned him as an agent since he has to complete the mission on behalf of the Savior. JungWoo notices that he can see the agent's message as well as the administrator, claims that an agent has appeared to assist him in completing his missions, and it seems that Mr. Jo will now be able to manage the Ark on his own while he can even borrow or request essence from the Savior, which can be done by the Savior's approval. There is also a feature to forfeit the Savior title by using the will function, which starts to look pointless to JungWoo, but he doesn't understand why Mr. Jo was the one selected in the first place, as if the Earth thinks that he could replace JungWoo as a Savior. JungWoo starts activating the Manage Arc and borrow the Essence option for now, and the top number starts showing the amount he can get from the Savior, which starts to feel heavy for Mr. Jo as he gets shocked to see the amount. Jung-seong gets a grasp of the agent system before everyone, and they start preparing to resettle in Namyeongju thinking that they can eat inside the helicopter. While riding the helicopter, Myung-gil notices that something is coming out of the gateways, and it seems that the new monsters have an eel-like resemblance, but they can even fly this time. When Kim tries his best to land after getting advice from JungWoo, they get hit by a lot of monsters, and as JungWoo notices that they do not have anything else to do in their grasp, he makes Kim crash on the ground knowing that they do not have any other ways. Then when everyone asks for a way to stay alive at this moment, JungWoo claims that they will be fine since they have Mr. Jo, and JungWoo claims that he needs Mr. Jo to keep the protective shield active while he goes to close the gateway. JungWoo suggests should request 80,000 essences, since an hour will be a good amount of time, and as soon as the essences hit the count, Mr. Jo starts adjusting his body, and JungWoo suggests that he should mainly focus on keeping himself alive. Suddenly, Kim's ex-wife Seon-hui starts to feel quite bad after the eel-looking monsters start hitting the protective barrier, making horrifying sounds above their head. Sensing the situation has gone quite badly, Mr. Joe prays that JungWoo will come soon to recover their situation soon enough. On the other hand, JungWoo is busy blowing through all the monsters, and soon when the gateway gets terminated, the monster starts fleeing quickly. According to the evaluator, the monsters work on getting essences back into their own world as they prefer to remain in the vicinity of the gateways. JungWoo didn't know that the monsters use the gateways to return their essence, and this time he realized what the notifications were about as the evaluator was referring to essences being taken to another world, since the larger the gateway, the more monsters pass through it. Also, he finds out that the gateways evolve over time, and JungWoo realizes that he was so busy running away on the first day like the evaluator told him, which made him feel like he shouldn't even check anyway. He knows that he needs to prepare himself as the gateway in Gasan must be massive by now, and they all go on to select their holy ground, knowing that it can only be done once in a lifetime, which will be permanent in the end. After thinking about it a lot, Jung-seong thinks that the initiative that was planned is fine for them, and when they ask JungWoo about his opinion, he claims that what he thinks isn't that important at all. But he seems concerned about urban development experts since the population will be growing soon enough as they will be needing houses. But Jung-seong suggests that they need someone with experience in construction, and as they confirm each other's doubts, JungWoo finalizes creating the holy ground, which flows an immense power from JungWoo to the sky, which starts shaking the land by rumbling, and at that time a huge protective barrier starts appearing around the zone, which makes everyone in the Savior chat talking about it. As JungWoo realizes that people will soon start to flood their zone, he knows that the rest of the responsibility will be all above Mr. Joe's shoulders, since he is the agent who should be taking care of all that. JungWoo then starts preparing to leave since Kim and the others are ready to go, and before leaving, JungWoo makes it quite clear to Mr. Joe that it will be his duty to defend the holy ground as he will be deciding who can enter the Ark and who cannot, as he is the only agent of JungWoo and there will be various kind of people he will have to deal with, including infrastructure megamines. Then JungWoo also makes it clear to Mr. Joe that if there is any kind of problem he is having a tough time dealing with, he can request 44 essences anytime he wants, as it will be taken as a signal to JungWoo, who will then come over to see it through the end. Then when Kim asks where they should be going first, JungWoo decides that they should head over to DS Group as they will have a chance to close any gateways that appear before they handle the DS Group. Please read the pinned comment about the next part.